Resolution numbers 597 and 598. And in addition thereto are the privilege speeches delivered by Senator Panfilo Lacson on January 18th of January 2021 on unresolved issues on the Sinovac vaccine, and by Senator Francis Tolentino delivered on 19 January 2021 on the Food and Drug Administration's unauthorized discretion, which is still in relation to the National COVID-19 Vaccination Program. So the previous hearing of the committee was supposed to be the last. But however, after our thorough review of the data and information gathered during the two exhaustive hearings, the body deemed it necessary to conduct further deliberations on the National COVID-19 Vaccination Program, so as questions that stemmed from the earlier proceedings will be clearly and finally answered, and the committee to better come up with sound and relevant recommendations, and perhaps take up the recommendations of the vaccine czar, Secretary Galvez, on the legislation necessary, especially on the indemnification. I would also like to reiterate what I said during the first hearing, particularly on the primordial intent of the committee's hearing, which is to mainly find out the roadmap of the government's national vaccination program, so that this committee, and most especially the people, our people, will be well informed of what lies ahead in further continuing in this alarming pandemic that has spread worldwide. Furthermore, just as a disclosure, I, together with Senator Ping Lacson and Senator Ronald De La Rosa, met with Secretary Galvez. We saw documents that will prove surely beneficial to our people. And also we came across information for the necessity of the non-disclosure agreements. So we are assured by Secretary Galvez of the utmost transparency, and I'm sure we can look into the negotiations at any time. By the way, thank you, Secretary Galvez, for reaching out, and thank you to give our gratitude to the President for heeding the call of the Senate to look into the matter. Thank you. On our part, we warned him of the possibility of some unscrupulous others who might take advantage of these negotiations, which led Secretary Galvez to promise to keep the Senate posted on the goings on relative to the procurement of COVID-19 vaccines. We have nothing but good intentions in conducting these public hearings, because we both wanted to put an end to this pandemic as soon as possible. And as I have already stated, I believe that the executive department and we are both looking for what is for the greater good of the people. We, the members of the Senate, do not favor any particular brand of vaccines, but we favor a vaccine or any vaccine that is correctly priced, properly procured, and distributed. So hopefully, again, after today's hearing, all the issues will be resolved and no further question or doubt will crop up from the discussions that will transpire today. And I hope that through this, we will be able to convince the Filipino people to believe in vaccines and the vaccination in general. All right, so before we formally begin the discussions, may we again request the Secretary to acknowledge the presence of our invited resource persons for the record. And afterwards, the Secretary is directed to administer the oath to those resource persons who are joining us for the first time. And I would like to remind our resource persons that you are still under the same oath as before. Secretary Villariga, please.
The following resource persons are present in today's hearing: Secretary Carlito Galvez Jr., the Vaccine Czar, together with Assistant Secretary Wilben Mayor and Director Pamela Padilla Salvan. From the Department of Health, physically present today, Secretary Francisco Duque, together with Undersecretary Maria Carolina Taño of the Procurement and Supply Chain Management Team and Director Maria Soledad Antonio of the Bureau of Health International Health Cooperation. From the Department of Finance, present is Undersecretary Mark Dennis Hoven together with Assistant Secretary Maria Adita Tan and Attorney Jenaira May Halasco. From the Department of Foreign Affairs, present physically is Assistant Secretary Eric Gerardo Tamayo. From the Department of Science and Technology, present virtually is Assistant Secretary Leia Buendia and Dr. Jaime Montoya, who is physically present today. From the Department of Interior and Local Government, physically present today is Undersecretary Epimaco Densing III. Testing Czar and Deputy Chief Implementer of the IATF, Secretary Vincencio Dizon, is physically present today together with Attorney Joanna Capones. From the Food and Drug Administration, physically present today is Director General Lorando Domingo. From the Philippine Medical Association, PMA, virtually present Dr. Benito Atienza together with Dr. Lulu Bravo, virtually present, Chair of the PMA Ad Hoc Committee on Vaccination. From Zuelig Pharma Philippines, physically present today, Ms. Janet Hakosalem. From Pfizer Philippines, virtually present, Mr. Andreas Rydell. From Unilab Inc., virtually present, Attorney Dave Frederick Escalona. From the Cold Chain Association of the Philippines, virtually present, Mr. Anthony Dizon. From the Health Technology Assessment Council, present are Dr. Maria Carines Alejandria, Dr. Jose Enrico Lazaro, and Dr. Mediadora Saniel. From MKG Universal Drugs Trading Corporation, present today is Attorney Mark Christopher Tolentino, its President and CEO. May we request the resource persons who have not taken their oaths in previous hearings to please stand for the oath. And please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth in this hearing? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Before our
Mr. President,
the Minority Leader, Senator Dillon.
with your permission, Mr. President, may I make a short manifestation before we formally call on the resource persons present this morning?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. I take note of your statement, Mr. President, that you had a meeting with Secretary Galvez, and more or less from the tenor of your manifestation, you are satisfied that the actuations of Secretary Galvez, particularly on the reluctance to make public the pricing of Sinovac, is needed because of the prejudice it can cause to our country when the needed supply agreement will have to be signed. Mr. President, just for the record, we never for a moment doubted the integrity of Secretary Valdez. I do not know Secretary Valdez personally, but from all indications, he enjoys a high degree of respect among his peers. But we have raised issues on the pricing of Sinovac, principally because of the constitutional provision that the right of the people to information on matters of public concern shall be recognized. And this was interpreted in the case of Chavez versus Public State Authority and Amari, that the constitutional right to information includes official information on ongoing negotiations before a contract. Having said that, Mr. President, we note that AstraZeneca, Oxford AstraZeneca, has made public the cost of the vaccines purchased by the private sector at $5 per dose or $10 for 2 doses. Having said that, Mr. President, we defer to the judgment the judgment of the Senate President, not not to make public through this open committee of the whole hearing the Sinovac prices at the time that the negotiations are still ongoing, and there is a commitment that since these are public funds, after signing of the supply agreement, we confirm that the position we hear and we reconfirm the position of the Senate President that he will be one with us in compelling the publication of the price after the supply agreement is signed with Sinovac for better public order. With that, we assume that this is the one that what I have stated for the record will transpire after the contract is signed, that the public will be informed of the terms of the supply agreement with Sinovac to remove all doubts and in order that the confidence of the people in our ability to address the pandemic will be enhanced, because I will repeat, only 47% of our people today would want to be vaccinated, and the issue of confidence is intricately related to the information that will be made available to the public. So that's my manifestation, Mr. President. I hope it goes on record for clarity. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, the Minority Leader, Your Honor, Senator Drilon. We take note of your manifestation. We place it on record. Thank you. Again, let us start with the discussions, but before that, we give the floor to Secretary Carlito Galvez Jr. for an opening statement.
Your Honors, to our Senate President, Honorable Vicente Sotto, the members of the Senate of the Whole, my fellow cabinet members, good morning. Allow me to thank the leadership of the Senate for giving us the opportunity to provide greater clarity to the national government's vaccine procurement efforts during our meeting on Wednesday, January 20. The meeting is instructed also by the President, Rodrigo Duterte, to allow me to shed light on the pressing concerns raised during the Senate's Committee of the Whole hearings last week, without violating the terms of the non-disclosure agreement that I and other members of the negotiating team have signed. My fellow negotiators and I are legally bound to honor these agreements. Our failure to comply with them would compromise the orders we have already made with not only one, but with all pharmaceutical companies that we have been negotiating. But we will provide, Your Honor, the information in due time, considering that negotiation is ongoing, and during this time, prices may go up and down. So we cannot reveal, and then also the companies are also negotiating with other countries, and our negotiation will also be compromised. This is the last thing we had like to happen, considering that we are limited supply and vaccines and the global market. There are also issues in Malaysia and now in Europe, wherein the prices have been revealed. And in revealing the prices, the volumes, the delivery of the volumes had been cancelled, and the negotiation had also been compromised. I sincerely appreciated the role of the Senate in helping us to explain to our countrymen the complicated process involved in negotiating and procuring vaccines for the country. Also, to put clarity on our national vaccination roadmap And we also thank and recognize the different recommendations to the gaps that they have seen in our roadmap. I would like also to put on record that we recognize and respect the oversight functions of the Senate, given that we all share the same objective, which is to ensure that the Filipino people will have access to safe, effective, and cost-efficient vaccines. Further, we would like to assure our highly esteemed senators and countrymen that all our negotiations are above board and will be free from corruption. And we will make our reports to you, Senate President, regularly, sir. Our negotiations with the vaccine manufacturers are based on the guidance given to us by the President, Rodrigo Roa Duterte, which are anchored on the principles of transparency and accountability. And he emphasized that he has no tolerance on corruption. Therefore, we and other members of the negotiating team are committed to carry out our duties without jeopardizing the agreements the government has reached with the vaccine makers and preserving the best interests of both parties. We promise to reveal the exact prices and other details of our negotiations in due time as we firm up our agreements. I would like to thank Senate President Vicente Sotto III, as well as Senators Panfilo Lacson and Ronaldo De La Rosa for giving me your time to clarify and to also to Baguio Mayor Benjamin Magalong for facilitating the meeting. I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to all the members of the Senate for the patience, understanding, and most of all, support you have given to the vaccine czar and to the members of the vaccine cluster. Rest assured that we will continue to perform our duties with respect for all concerned in a spirit of integrity, accountability, fairness, and transparency. And also, I would like to make a public address that for whatever statement that I make, I will make an apology if I have hurted your feelings. Mabuhay po ang Senado, mabuhay po ang Sambayang Pilipino. Maraming salamat po. And we will work together with the Senate because we know that in this pandemic, we need to work together. And we really appreciated your help during the passing of the Bayanihan 2 and Bayanihan 2 and Bayanihan 1. And we would like to recommend that in this hearing, we will reiterate to enact an indemnification law, considering it is very needed on our co-vaccination of 20% of the population, and also to ensure the readily available funds for the adverse effects of the vaccine. Number 2 is to allow also the LGUs to undertake advanced market payments, considering that the law prohibits us from making payments and no indicative date of delivery. And then number 3, to declare COVID-19 vaccine as a strategic assets for the strict government control. And number 4, and the declaration of the COVID-19 vaccines to be free from taxes and custom duty, so that its state of inefficacy will be preserved during its transport and handover. That's all, Your Honors, and maraming po salamat.
Thank you, Secretary Galvez. We
President,
do appreciate
one
your
question.
humility and sincerity. Thank you very much. The minority leader again, manifestation before we start.
Just one question. Just one question, Mr. President. Is Secretary Valdez committed to brief the Senate on the pricing of Sinovac after, and underscore the word after, the supply contract is signed, because these are public funds subject to audit in any case, so that therefore I have his commitment on record that after the supply agreement is signed, the Senate and the people will be informed of the terms of the supply agreement without the need for a committee of the whole.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. All right. So let's start. As usual, we will be allotting each member 10 minutes. The order of questioning, the usual practice, those physically present, then the officers, and then the order of logging in. Let's start now with Senator Panfilo Lacson.
Mr. President,
Ah,
just a point.
yes, Senator Pangilinan.
Yes, an administrative matter. Is Secretary Duque attending the hearing today?
Yes, he is here.
Okay, thank you for that.
All right, Senator Panfilo Lacson is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. As manifested earlier by the distinguished minority leader, and as Your Honor and I are aware, our debates mostly on the Senate floor and informally in the lounge, mostly centered on the confidentiality disclosure agreement, particularly on possible constitutional infirmities and pertinent legal issues involved, taking into consideration Article 3, Section 7 of the 1987 Constitution, which of course is qualified by the phrase subject to such limitations as may be provided by law. Now, for the benefit of the public and those who requested me to ask this question, which law or jurisprudence, if any, exempts such right of the people to information on matters of public concern, access to official records and to documents and papers pertaining to official acts, transactions, or decisions, as well as to government research data as used for policy development? Of course, I called it from the provision of the Constitution. So anybody can answer, just for the benefit of the public, because ito yung pinaka most discussed na issue in the aspect of the CDA. Thank you.
Can we have Yusek Mark Hoven to answer?
Mr. Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Chair. So basically, the jurisprudence on right to the public's information is stems from the case of Chavez versus PCGG, which was penned by then Justice Artemio Panginiban. So basically, it provides certain exceptions, including privileged information. Among the list of privileged information is trade secrets. So trade secrets are considered among privileged information which need not be disclosed. So there's a subsequent decision also by the court dated 2017, Airfield Corporation versus Penswell, where the court explicitly states that a price list is considered as a trade secret. So by virtue of this claim of privileged information, the government opts not to disclose the price of the vaccines at this particular point. But nonetheless, we still commit to provide a list of the prices once the definitive supply agreements are signed. Thank you.
And in due time, of course, at the proper time. And that's in compliance with the, of course, another constitutional provision on the COA. Di ba? Yung, I think, of course, at the proper time. So that's clear enough. So that's settled, And we will abide by the confidentiality disclosure agreement as agreed between two parties. My next question is kay Secretary Duque. Ito patanong din lang po ito, Yung tungkol sa vaccine passport or yung vaccination certificate, will it be a necessity for work, travel, commuting, dining out, church worship, marketing, and other basic activities?
The concept, Your Honor, is being studied by our technical working group in the IATF. But yung kasi pong konsepto ng passport, parang sinasabi ko, nabakunahan ka, pwede ka nang pumunta sa mga lugar, pwede ka nang makihalubilo, etc. Pero kasi sa ngayon po, lumalabas ang mga bakuna, wala pang sapat na ebidensya na nagpapakita na ito po ay talaga makakapigil ng transmission. It may prevent clinical disease, it may prevent severe disease and hospitalization, but insofar as the transmissibility of the virus po, yan ay hindi pa po malinaw. Yan lang po.
Salamat po. Tapos itong huli na lang, my third question, third and last. As far as COVID infections, saka yung mortality, yung deaths, where are we in the world rankings? Yung per capita, of course.
Ang atin po sa ngayon, we are number 32. Nag-rank po tayo number 32 in absolute COVID-19 infection. We are ranked about 125, but hindi ko po masyado 125 based on our infection on a per million population. So we're probably about 4,005 to 4,800 per million population. The 40 countries that have already begun with their vaccination since December are 5 to 10 times more than our cases per million population. It's very important po na i-relate natin sa population. So sa atin pong death rate, kung di po ako nagkakamali, ay we are also about 113. But I will give you the final ranking kasi nagbabago po araw-araw. We are at about 84 per million population. Mga 84, 89 per million population po tayo. So mababa po tayo pagdating po sa ranking on a per million population.
Maraming salamat po. That's all for this representation, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Lacson. Senator Risa Hontiveros, you're recognized. You have 10 minutes.
Salamat, Mr. President, at magandang umaga po sa lahat. At the outset, Mr. President, I'd like to make of record that I join with the manifestation of the minority leader at the opening of our hearing that the right to information, even during a negotiation stage, is guaranteed by the Constitution and precisely, specifically as ruled in Chavez versus PEA. And that the price, our assumption and the assurance given by Secretary Galvez, that the price will be made public after the supply agreement is signed. For the record, Mr. President, Mr. Chair, at the outset of my interpellation. Mr. President, ang maganda po sa ating pagdinig sa COVID-19 vaccine program ng bansa ay nagkakaroon tayo ng pagkakataong masagot ang mga tanong ng ating mga kababayan ukol dito sa COVID-19 vaccines. Ang lagi kong pahayag ay ito, 3 bagay lamang. Gusto natin ng bakunang ligtas, bakunang epektibo, at bakunang darating sa oras. Kaya nakakalungkot po ang akusasyon ng Malacanang na kaya daw tayo mausisa ay dahil may pinapaboran daw tayong brand ng bakuna. I want to also put it on record, and it's fully reflected in our Senate Journal, na sa hinaba-haba ng mga hearing dito sa Senado tungkol sa vaccines, wala ni isang beses na ako o kahit sinong senador ay may kinilingan na kahit anong brand. Kaya patuloy ako magtatanong tungkol sa mga bakuna na hindi pa kumpleto ang datos. Nasa pangatlong hearing na tayo at maraming natitirang tanong. Ang tanong ng mga senador ay tanong din ng taong bayan. Ano ang tunay na efficacy rate ng mga ito? Magkano nga ba ito? Nasaan na ang kumpletong datos? Para magkaroon ng accountability, kailangan sagutin ang mga ito. Hindi namin kailangan na maging medrep ang alinmang bahagi ng gobyerno. We just need to trust that you will guard the health of Filipinos by bringing only the best and the safest vaccines here. Ni isang sentimo ay hindi dapat mapunta sa kahit anong bakuna na hindi napatunayang ligtas. Bilyon-bilyon ang gagastusin natin dito, kaya dapat makasulit ang mga Pilipino. To my first question, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman, on Mikey Arroyo and Sinopharm. Meron po akong slide dito, Mr. President. Last hearing, I asked the FDA if they were able to find out who was the Juan Miguel Arroyo of LTA Inc., who that was, who sent them an empty email with attachments of Sinopharm. The FDA has since confirmed, Mr. President, that the email from Juan Miguel Arroyo of LTA Inc. is from incumbent Representative Mikey Arroyo, dito po sa FDA letter. So could I please ask the FDA, to your knowledge, Director General Domingo, is LTA Inc. going to be one of the distributors of Sinopharm?
Mr. President, Madam Senator, so this one po was on November 10, and Congressman Mike Arroyo said he wanted to share some information on a vaccine that might be useful to the FDA, and I suggested to email and also to the VEP kasi po yung vaccine expert panel ang first na tumitingin ng mga bakuna. And he did send the email to the VEP. Pagkatapos po, sumagot yata yung BEP ng nagtatanong kung ano nga po yung intention, and there was no further communication after that.
So in the 2 months po mula nung sulat na ito ng November 10, hindi nyo pa po alam, hindi nyo pa po masabi sa amin dito sa Senado kung magiging distributor ng Sinopharm ang LTA Inc.
Wala naman pong indication at wala pa pong nag-a-apply ng EUA for Sinopharm sa FDA.
I understand, Mr. President, that indeed, kahit dito po sa matrix natin, hindi pa po nag-a-apply ng EUA ang Sinopharm. In any case po, Director General Domingo, Mr. President, would you agree with me that local distributors of a COVID vaccine or any company that will be involved in the vaccine distribution process should be thoroughly vetted?
Madam Senator, Mr. President, primary requirement is for the company to have a license to operate as a pharmaceutical importer and distributor. So, pag ganun po, chinecheck po natin yung kumpanya, including po inspections ng kanilang office before we grant that. So, yun po talaga yung primary requirement for an EUA application. So, only licensed companies can apply for an EUA or the government.
So kung sakali pong ang LTA Inc. ay mag-a-apply na maging distributor ng Sinopharm, kailangan dumaan din sila sa ganitong mga primary requirements tulad ng magkakaroon or mayroon silang license to operate.
Yes, ma'am. Lahat po ng kumpanya na gusto pong mag-distribute, mag-import ng gamot at bakuna sa Pilipinas, kailangan pong kumuha ng license to operate sa FDA.
Mr. President, siguro kahit itong paunang pagpaparamdam ng LTA Inc. kaugnay ng Sinopharm ay nakababahala ng konti because of LTA's checkered track record. I remember po, Mr. President, na LTA, helmed by the former First Gentleman, ay nasa sentro ng tinatawag na chopper scam, subject of a pending case before the Sandigan Bayan. But lastly, on this issue, Mr. President, Congress has oversight functions on the vaccine rollout, hindi po ba, Director General Domingo?
Yes, ma'am. In fact, last week po nagkaroon din ng briefing at saka hearing po sa Kongreso on the vaccine program.
Opo. And in fact, that is why we are having this committee of the whole hearing. Doesn't it appear unseemly that a company associated with a sitting legislator, katulad lang po namin, may have or may come to have financial interest in a particular vaccine brand? Dahil bagamat 2 buwan hindi na nagparamdam ulit, unang nag-email po sa inyo na may attachments tungkol sa Sinopharm.
Well, Madam Sir, I did not find it very unusual when he offered information on a vaccine. Madalas naman po na nakakatanggap ako ng mga inquiry sa mga congressman, sa mga mayor, governor about certain products and or certain facilities. So I did not find it unusual actually.
Medyo iba yung impression natin, Director Domingo, sa ganyang klaseng mga sitwasyon. But last follow-up question po about this issue. Just for the record, has LTA Inc. applied for a license to operate as a pharma importer?
Madam Senator, no.
Thank you, Director General. Moving on to my next issue, Mr. President, on China's so-called vaccine diplomacy. When the DFA announced that China promised to donate 500,000 free vaccine shots to the Philippines, the FDA initially said that no FDA approval was needed to use these. It was only after we senators expressed alarm that the FDA corrected their statement, and that was really a very welcome correction. Kung hindi nag-react mga senador, baka nabigyan pa ang 250,000 vaccine shots ng free pass papasok ng bansa. Why did we seem overeager at that point to accept this gift that we were even willing to abdicate or sacrifice our safety nets? Director General, if you would care to.
Yeah, Madam Senator, I think I was asked po kasi kung pwede bang tumanggap ang DOH ng unregistered products. Pag po kasi emergency, meron pong administrative order ang DOH na pwede silang tumanggap ng produkto na unregistered. In fact, nung pong panambayanihan to, automatic po yun Basta registered sa home country, automatic approval dapat dito sa Pilipinas. Pero nag-expire na yon. So ang ginagawa po doon sa AO na luma, pag po ang isang gamot, pagkain, or bakuna unregistered, susulat po sa DOH, and then DOH, if they agree, they say, yes, we will accept the donation. Pagkatapos po yung DOH, siya po ang magre-register ng produkto sa FDA. So maaari po niyang tanggapin kahit unregistered, pero kukuha po siya ng registration sa FDA before po gamitin.
Sana po siguro, Director General, nung una niyong sinagot yung tanong na iyon, pinoint out niyo po yung AO at yung iba pang references na sinasabi niyo sa amin yun. Kung ganun po kasi niyo kinonteksto, hindi po kami naalarma ang mga senador, hindi rin natakot yung mga Pilipino, kasama na yung mga magulang na hindi sanay na may anumang vaccine na gagamitin dito na wala munang inyong seal of approval. Tsaka kasi talaga yung alaala ko nung una sinabi nyo pwedeng tanggapin at gamitin. In any case po, Mr. President, Director General, mabuti nga po at kinorek nyo na yung unang statement na iyon at pwede ang mamamayan magkaroon ng kumpiyansa na sisiguruhin ng FDA na alinmang mga vaccines na gagamitin dito ay kailangan talagang dumaan muna sa inyong pag-aaproba. Sabi ko nga, wag niyo pong i-abdicate yung inyong mandate dahil napaka-importante. Fully exercise it po. Meron bang kapalit ang mga bakunang ito? Kasi naalala ko po nung nakaraang hearing, may sinabing baka dahil sa diplomacy, no? Yung mga circumstances surrounding this giving and receiving of a gift. Kaya ako natanong ngayon umaga yung vaccine diplomacy. So, sa diplomasya, may kapalit ba yung mga bakunang ito sa pagkaalam nyo, Director General?
Wala naman pong pwede kasing maging conditions, no? Noon pong siguro po a few months ago, ma'am, may mga nagtatanong actually na companies for gamot at saka possible vaccines for ito nga pong COVID-19. Nagtatanong sila kung mag-donate ba sila pagkatapos hiningan ng approval ng DOH, tas na-approve, ibig sabihin, pwede na silang pumasok sa approve. So, kindaro po sa kanila, hindi po. Halimbawa, nag-donate kayo ng 50,000 doses, no? Tapos hiningan po ito ng registration ng FDA, ng DOH, tas dinrun po ng authorization ng FDA. Ang binibigay po namin authorization for those 50,000 doses lamang, not for the product in general. So hindi pa rin po nila pwedeng gamitin ang authorization from FDA na nasa DOH. Lagi po 'yon per particular batch, kung ilang volume, yun lang po ang pinapayagan. So natigil na po 'yun Pero nung umpisa nga po, may mga akala po nila po pwede 'yun.
Wala naman pong problema, Mr. President, Director General, kung may authorization. Kaya nga lang kami na-alarma dahil yung unang statement ng FDA ay pwedeng gamitin kahit hindi pa authorized ng FDA. At hindi lang ito 50,000, 10 times that magnitude. So muli po, mabuti na kinorek nyo yung ganong posisyon. Dahil yung corrected position nyo, yun po sa tingin ko ang tamang posisyon ng FDA kaugnay ng vaccines, lalo na po sa gitna nitong pandemya. At sa totoo lang po kasi, Mr. President, Director General, mukhang mababa ang kumpiyansa ng publiko ukol sa mga bakuna na manggagaling sa China kahit na ito ang biniblida ng Malacanang. Di rin nakakatulong yung pagtatakip at kawalan ng transparency ukol sa pagbili ng mga bakuna na iyan in whatever fashion. Despite yung appreciation ko for yung pagkaklaro na nangyari sa simula nitong hearing tungkol sa transparency on the prices of the vaccines. Dahil may pagtatakip, may kawalan ng transparency in some aspects, suspecha tuloy ng marami baka ginagamit ng China ang so-called vaccine diplomacy para mapilit ang ibang mga bansa na sumunod sa gusto nito. Siguro balik po ako kay Sec Galvez dahil isang strategic question din. Hindi ba nakaaapekto, Mr. President, ang pagbili natin ng Chinese vaccine sa ating strategic goals at foreign policy objectives? Speaking of diplomacy.
Your Honor, Mr. President. Sinabi na po namin na last hearing that we are making some sort of portfolio of vaccine, including the different platforms. As we have said earlier, we have 5 platforms of the vaccine, the inactivated, the subroutine, the viral vector, mRNA, and also the DNA. Based on this series of presentation to us by the vaccine expert panel, the inactivated virus platform is the safest among all vaccines because it's been being used more than 200 years ago. And considering that the vaccine expert panel and the government is looking for the safe and effective vaccine, we consider those vaccines with the same platform. And one of them are the Chinese some of them are the Chinese vaccine. So we consider that considering that this is the most we call it the safest among the vaccine platform. And also we consulted we consulted also our expert abroad. We have also consultants abroad, and they said that the among the three Chinese vaccine, Sinovac is its EUA is for elderly and vulnerable people. CanSino, the EUA of CanSino is for its soldiers and military, and Sinopharm is for general use. With this, we also conducted a research that and they submitted to me the DEP submitted to me the list in accordance to ranking, and they ranked Sinovac above Sinopharm and Casino. So that's that's the truth of that selection process that we have undertaken with the DEP. So this is not it's not basically biased on a certain platform or certain countries, but we look at the different portfolio, which will become the candidate for for the major criteria that we have undertaken, including the paramount criteria of safety, efficacy, and cost effectiveness.
We actually share those criteria, Mr. President, Sec. So, kung tama yung sinasabi ng ating independent at pinagkakatiwalaang vaccine expert panel na may parang built-in advantage yung ilang sa mga vaccines na ito, including the China-made vaccines na sila ay inactivated virus platform, then they should use that built-in advantage in na-erase ang vaccine confidence ng mga Pilipino about themselves at hindi i-undermine yung vaccine confidence by, yun na nga, yung recent episodes na lumabas na pwede palang i-administer kahit walang FDA authorization. And whatever the case, Mr. President, Secretary, dapat no strings attached. And in particular po, lastly about that, maari po ba nating i-assure ang publiko na patuloy nating itataguyod yung ating national interest, for example, sa West Philippine Sea, at hindi ito ipagpapalit sa anumang klaseng diplomasya para lang makabili ng bakuna mula sa China?
Ma'am, in this pandemic, the global interest of the global commons is really to save humanity. So all countries rallied to support each other. So that's the context that we are looking, Your Honors, that every country wanted to help our global pandemic. So meaning ang po ng lahat ng mga countries, yung natin tinatawag natin yung ating mga differences on the West Philippine Sea should be set aside because this is a global pandemic. We need nakikita po natin na talagang ang problema natin ngayon is a global menace, which is in order to control and contain the pandemic. There are many biases. I've been working also with the diplomatic corps and asking for help because there are many countries who are buying more than 6 times or 7 times their population, and here comes the other country that they don't have even 10% of their own, but they are willing to help us.
Mr. President, Secretary, if I may, yung sinabi niyong we may set aside our differences on the West Philippine Sea dahil nga may global pandemic. Pero bawat bansa naman po may bottom lines. Kahit lahat tayo nag-exert ng effort magtulungan. So I'm simply asking for a reassurance, Mr. President, Secretary, na hindi natin babawasan yung ating pagtaguyod ng national interest sa West Philippine Sea para dito, kahit dito sa usapin ng pagbili ng vaccine sa China. That's the only reassurance I'm seeking, Mr. President. Medyo na gulat ako dun sa sinabing set aside our differences in the West Philippine Sea. Hindi po yan na quid pro quo, Mr. President.
I would like to know. I would like to make a clarification. We will not compromise our stake,
Thank
but
you.
meaning in this pandemic, we will it is a science. I'm telling the public that our selection of the vaccine science base is based on the recommendation of the BEP and also the recommendations of the panel, and also it will go to the pathway of the FDA. But in this pandemic, we saw that the WHO rallied the different countries so that they created COVAX. And most of the vaccine makers also applied on the COVAX facility, including Pfizer, AstraZeneca, Sinovac, Sinopharm, and CanSino, so that they can pull in all the vaccines in order to help other countries that cannot buy or cannot have access on the pandemic. So that's why at the end of the concept that we are looking to is we are adhering with the concept of equitable access, the safety and efficacy of the vaccine, and at the same time we are looking at the global interest of really putting an end on this pandemic. So this is a world menace.
Yes, no question
Meaning
about
the
that,
differences
Mr.
that we
President.
have, maybe we have to really to set it aside so that we can rally. That's my point, to rally behind saving humanity.
Senator Tiveros, please
Mr.
wrap.
President, I will do so, Mr. President. I appreciate the clarification from the Secretary, pero sa tingin ko pa rin po, and speaking of platforms, as we were discussing earlier, our country can continue to occupy several platforms at the same time. Yung platform natin sa Global Partnership Against COVID-19, lalo na through COVAX, at yung platform na napanalunan natin sa The Hague. I don't think one is exchangeable for the other, and we are within our rights na patuloy na i-advance yung ating common at saka national interests in both those platforms. So I'll suspend for this round, first round, Mr. President, at salamat po. In the second round, I'll continue with questions on Sinovac vaccine clinical trials, and then also the black market allegations about Sinopharm. Oh, and lastly,
Yes.
if I may, Mr. President, just one last sentence. If we could look related to the last comments of Secretary Galvez, let's look at the horizons beyond COVID. Kasi sabi natin we're moving towards a better new normal. Because precisely, after this pandemic, baka energy naman, halimbawa, ang issue, nandito yung aming Senate Committee on Energy Chair, pero energy naman ang issue dahil sa malampaya na nauubusan na ng gas. And there we will continue to have to engage with, hopefully come to some win-win solution with China and the other countries that are interested in that area of the Philippine territory. Salamat po, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Tiveros, and hopefully we have a shorter hearing today. Senator Villanueva, you're next. You have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. President. At the onset, let me congratulate everyone, especially the Senate President, Senator Pings, always be around during the evening, and of course the IATF. We also like to put on record the commendation that we have been giving to the IATF officials, especially Secretary Galvez, and it may sound like a broken record that we continue to respect his integrity and his competence in negotiating for the Filipino people. We take note of your manifestation a while ago, Secretary Galvez, and praise God at kayo ho, na-appreciate nyo yung ginagawa ho natin dito sa Senado at yung ating oversight function para siguruhin na ang hangarin namin na magkaroon lang ng mabisa, mura o abot kaya na vaccine at makakarating po ito kaagad. At dun sa mga hindi nakakaintindi ng ginagawa ng Senado, talagang may problema na ho sila sa isip nila. Muli, salamat Secretary Galvez dun sa inyong manifestation. Yung first question ko po, Secretary, tsaka sa IATF, kay Secretary Duque, Secretary Galvez, we've been calling for dry runs or practice runs. Meron na po ba o magsisimula na tayo sa mga dry runs or practice runs so that we have been calling for this to allow the government to fix kinks, plug manpower, shortages, give realistic idea on how long would it take to inject the number of people that we are targeting. Kasi in the US, we have seen what they were doing before the vaccines. Nag-conduct na sila ng mga dry runs, tinime nila yung each phase, yung loading from the planes to the tracking to local hubs, etc. So we wanted to find out kung nasaan na po tayo. Thank you.
Sir, since last year, we directed the different LGUs to start early the preparation, and most of the mayors responded very positively. In the NCR right now, we saw the rehearsals being made by Manila, and also we have also Pasig last 2 days ago, and we are also planning to have the Quezon City is supposed to be this Friday. And also Taguig, they are already have the walkthrough of the different cold chain, and by next week we will have a time and motion from the airport going to the warehouse and going to the different destinations, different hubs and different spokes that we will be having. So the rehearsal that we will be having will be done next week until February, third week of February.
That's good, Secretary. And right now, are we looking at or may nakikita na ho ba tayo na problema o hamon na kinakaharap? Other than what you made mention na next week mag-start na yung phase by phase at mas detalye ang mangyayaring practice runs.
Sir, yung po ang po natin, ang nakikita naming challenges is basically if the vaccine will be delivered in trickles, there should be a phased vaccination, meaning the priority given by the DOH will be the framework that we will follow. But we saw some problems because many people also will tell that this should be the priority. That's why we are now leveling up on the possibility of having some sort of flexible registration, considering that it also happened in US that when they have the vaccination, no one appears, and once that the vaccine, for example, the vaccine that have the ultra cold chain requirement, you cannot bring them back to the storage.
I'm about to propose that, Secretary, na dun sa dry run, sama na rin natin yung mga tao na naghihintay dun sa lugar. So
Yes,
yung
sir, yes, sir.
phase na coming from the storage and perhaps escortan natin para hindi ma-traffic or it's masiguro na makarating at the right time, the right place, and kung ilan yung targeted na babakunahan, nandun na rin po para magkaroon tayo ng maayos na simulation.
Yes, sir, we will do that, sir. We will.
I'd like to go to my the meat of my resolution again, 598 na tinail po natin, naging parte nitong ating pagdinig, ikatlong pagdinig na po ito, and we have I would say exhaustively tackled a lot of issues, and I'll go back to my particular focus, which is the vaccination and prioritization of our essential workers. For the past 2 hearings, I've been asking this question. Baka lang may update tayo, and I remember si Secretary Dizon is the most passionate siguro among AITF members that would update me on the list of our essential workers that will be prioritized. Again, I would like to put on record that in some countries, like in Indonesia, talagang focus nila, number one priority nila yung essential workers. As we wanted to open our economy. Secretary Vince?
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Senator Joel, thank you very much. First off, I think the entire IATF, especially our Secretary of Health and our Secretary of DOLE and the DTI, share the passion to really protect our essential workers, especially given their contributions to the economy. But before we give some details, Your Honor, we just want to thank on behalf of the entire national government the passion of Senator Villanueva in really fighting for the rights and the welfare of our workers, especially during this very difficult time in us battling the pandemic. Maraming salamat po, Senator, sa iyong passion para sa ating mga manggagawa. Just as an update, the various TWGs on the vaccine in the vaccine cluster, Your Honor, are currently working with the Department of Trade and Industry and the Department of Labor to have a very definitive list of the priority essential workers. However, what we can tell you now is that the priority essential workers will be workers coming from the following sectors. No, this is not final yet, Your Honor. By next week daw po, mapa-finalize po ng TWG and i-report po namin sa Senate. Workers from the following sectors: agriculture, forestry, fisheries, transportation, construction, food, tourism, essential retail, water refilling stations, laundry services, logistics, and courier services, sanitation services, telecommunication, energy, power, fuel, among others. So yun po yung initial list in coordination with DOLE and DTI, but we will provide po the final definitive one by next week, Your Honor. Thank you po.
Thank you, Secretary Vince. Yun sa sanitation, no, for example, you talk about the garbage collectors. Na-coordinate na po ba ito sa mga LGU officials natin, especially dun sa mga mag-acquire din ng vaccines?
Tuloy-tuloy naman po ang coordination, Senator, sa ating mga LGUs. Pero once na magkaroon na po ng definitive na listahan, ay lahat po ito ay co-coordinate sa lahat ng LGUs at sa iba't ibang ahensya din po ng gobyerno.
Thank you. Perhaps if we can have a list of targets and with target dates, we can break it down to regional yung breakdown po para lang masiguro natin, and we tackled this before, no, hindi magkaroon ng overlapping yung pinreparan ng LGU at yung tinatarget ng national government. I remember, I think yesterday, the ILG announced that LGU should craft their vaccination plans and master list of priority eligible population. So I hope maging malinaw yung synchronization ng ating national government at ating mga local government units.
Thank you very much, Senator. We will do exactly that, sir. Thank you so much for the recommendation.
Thanks again, Secretary Dizon. I'd like to ask our FDA Director General, Director Domingo. First of all, I'd like to put on record that I was also one of those guys and one of the senators here who got confused about the statement, the earlier statement made by FDA, and I'm glad that you corrected yourself or clarified yourself about it, and I hope that we will be more circumspect in giving statements, Director General, no, kasi marami na hong nalilito at magiging dangerous din yung ating mga statement kung hindi natin napag-aaralan gusto. Sir, ang question ko lang po, may mga clinical trials na po na ginagawa sa ating bansa? Am I correct? At ano-ano po itong mga napayagan na natin?
Yes, Mr. Senator, Mr. President, 3 po yung nag-apply ng clinical trials na dumaan po sa Vaccine Expert Panel at in-endorse po sa FDA. Yung pong Janssen Pharmaceuticals, ito po yung Johnson & Johnson na vaccine. Tapos yung pong Clover Pharmaceuticals. Tapos yung pangatlo po yung Sinovac. Lahat po ito ay pumasa na po sa Vaccine Expert Panel, sa Ethics Board, at saka sa technical review po ng FDA.
Nasaan na po ito? Are they in phase 3 clinical?
Phase 3 clinical trials.
All
po
of
lahat.
them?
Opo.
Opo. Director, how many participants in total are or will be recruited on these clinical trials?
Mr. Senator, hindi ko po memoryado, pero thousands po, a few thousands if I'm not mistaken.
Isang clinical trial, forgive my innocence about this, ilan po ba yung usually, give us a figure
For
lang.
example po, itong
More or less.
AstraZeneca at Pfizer, ito po mga sinubmit sa atin ng mga EUA applications, mga 30 to 40,000 po ang kanilang mga trial participants. So most of these trials, including po itong tatlong ginagawa sa atin, mga multi-center, multi-country po ito. So they don't naman do the 30,000 or 40,000 in one site. Minsan po 3,000 dito, 4,000 dito, and then they consolidate.
Okay. And we know that these volunteers may be required to exclude themselves from the vaccination program of the government while they are under the clinical trials. Am I correct?
Opo, yun po. So, kaya po yung ating vaccine expert panel, DOST po sila, Director Montoya, meron po silang ina-assign na zone kung saan po gagawin yung mga clinical trial para po ma-avoid yung paghahalo-halo ng bakuna.
Okay. However, may we clarify, after the conduct of the clinical trials, will these volunteers who receive placebos, correct me if I'm wrong, after the conduct of the clinical trials, will these volunteers who receive placebos have ready access to vaccines with approved EUA?
Opo. So usually po sa mga ganito mga pag-aaral, dahil meron po makakatanggap nga ng placebo, once na unblind na po yung study at nakita na talagang merong magandang epekto yung tunay na bakuna, so yun pong mga placebo arm, sila po usually ang may first option, priority sila na mabigyan ng totoo pong bakuna.
Okay, thank you. One last thing. As a general rule on vaccinating individuals who had previously contracted COVID-19, is it advisable that they get vaccinated or not?
Sa ngayon po yung worldwide na guidelines is that people have been infected before, basta hindi na po acute phase, they are still given the vaccine.
Meron na po bang pag-aaral like any potential side effects of vaccines on these people who had been previously infected? Dito sa Senado, may Voltes 5 po kami eh.
Wala pa pong final report eh. So ino-observe pa po ngayon yung mga previously, nire-record po yung mga may previous history of COVID, and then they're given the vaccinations, and we'll probably get the report po in actual use by siguro po a few months from now.
Yeah, and I asked that question because of the 505,939 cases, 466,993 have already recovered. So we wanted to know, no, for these individuals, kasi yung according to Dr. David Thomas of Johns Hopkins, ang recommendation niya is to get a vaccine. Pero alam din natin si Brazil President Bolsonaro who caught COVID last year, sabi niya he will not take any vaccine. So we will take a cue from you on this, no, para sa mga kababayan natin na nagkaroon ng COVID at masiguro nila that they are also safe in getting these vaccines. I only have 2 minutes, so may I just ask the DOH Secretary, Secretary Galvez and Secretary Duque, sorry, twice I think or 3 times I heard about the indemnification issue, no, and you made mention about indemnification fund for the few who will develop adverse side effects from the vaccines. But that's already about compensation. Let me ask this question about their treatment. For instance, if they seek immediate care from a public facility, ang presumption po siguro is that they will get it for free. Now, if they go to private, syempre papasok po dito yung PhilHealth. At pag-uusapan po na naman ano ba ang coverage niyan, no? let me just propose, and I'd like to hear from Secretary Duque, Secretary Galvez, and from the team, if we could already right now categorize ang vaccine side effects bilang isang parte ng ating programa at maglaan po tayo ng case rate. Ang bottom line ho, sana ma-attain natin yung at maipakita na zero balance sa billing rate dapat. Kasi ang worry po ng ating mga kababayan, and this is also my worry, Secretary Duque, example, if you develop an allergy or develop a respiratory distress, mag-manifest po yung respiratory distress, i-charge po ito doon sa existing case rates na may ceiling. At lalabas pa na may out of pocket expense ang nabakunahan. So I think this is something that we should be looking into, and I believe that we need this guarantee comfort, Secretary, to encourage our people to get jobs. May I know your reaction on this, sir?
You're absolutely correct, Your Honor, Mr. Chairman. Unang-una po, sa ating pong vaccination, nationwide immunization, vaccination, deployment and vaccination plan, doon po sa actual implementation, may kasama po tayong monitoring ng adverse events following immunization. The adverse events po, pwedeng mga minor na mga side effects ng pagbabakuna, yung pamumula, pamamaga, konting sa pananakit ng ulo, o lagnat, at panghihina. Pero ang binabantayan po natin dito, yung mga serious adverse events following immunization, at ganoon din po yung adverse events of special interest. Yung po mga kakaiba na kaganapan sa katawan ng isang tao na nabakunahan, meron po tayong mga sistema na nakalatag. Ito po yung local AFI or Adverse Events Following Immunization na committee, meron tayo sa region, at saka meron din po tayo sa national. Ngayon, patungkol naman po doon sa sino ba ang sasagot kung sakasakali nagkaroon po ng matinding side effects or halimbawa, anaphylactic shock. Yun po yung anaphylactic shock, yun po yung severe allergic reaction. Ayan po ay pangangasiwaan po yan ng ating pong mga doktor sa mga tukoy na mga ospital. Meron po tayong referral system, meron po tayong one hospital command. Ito po ay iuugnay doon po sa ating mga vaccination sites para tuloy-tuloy po, no? Kung sa pagka natapos po silang mabakunahan halimbawa, they will be observed for about 30 minutes to about 1 hour for some adverse effects, side effects, no? Pero hopefully hindi naman po serious. Nevertheless, kailangan paghandaan din natin just in case lang po, at meron po tayong mga life-saving medications na nakatabi na doon po mismo sa atin pong mga vaccination sites. Yung po sa PhilHealth, maganda po yung inyong sinabi na pwede po natin talagang pag-aralan ito na siguraduhin natin kung sakasakaling hindi pa matuloy yung indemnification fund legislation. Pero nakikiusap po kami kung pwede po sana i-consider po ninyo if legislative space will accommodate this proposal. Ano po? Pero ganun pa man, ang PhilHealth po ang sasagot naman kung may mga matinding side effects. Ano po? Sana po wala, pero hindi po natin masabi dahil bago po itong bakunang ito. So anything is possible, but we will make sure that we will be very careful in the administration of these vaccines, Your Honor.
Thank you.
No
Thank you.
balance billing is the objective.
Yes, thank you, Secretary. Una, yung sa indemnification fund, ako, I will support it, and we'll look into it, no, and study more. But in principle, I'm supportive of that, no. But again, that's already compensation. I wanted to talk about treatment, at tama po kayo. sasagutin natin because again, this is very important. Ang suggestion ko lang and I propose, makategorize na po yung vaccine effects doon sa PhilHealth program natin at muli, wag sana ito i-charge doon sa existing case rate because if you do that, will create another set of anxiety and worrisome dun sa ating mga kababayan na walang comfort guarantee yung pagbibigay ng bakuna. And again, we are here to help and encourage our people na magpabakuna. Yun lang po, Ginoong Pangulo. And before I end, Mr. President, I wanted to ask sana, but I saw Senator Gatchalian, who is the chair of the Basic Education Committee of the Senate, yung sa mga kabataan naman, yung mga minors, no? Kasi inaalaw po sila dun sa ibang lugar, Ginoong Pangulo, na pumunta, kunyari, sa mga GCQ, pero yung tanong ng mga magulang, kailan iaalaw yung face-to-face, pero hindi din sila pwedeng bakunahan. Again, Mr. President, thank you sa ating mga bisita. I'm almost sure that this is going to be our last hearing. Maraming salamat po. Again, we are here to help. We just wanted to have a mabisa, mura, at makakarating na bakuna sa ating mga kababayan. Maraming salamat. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Villanueva. Yes, he is next. Senator Sherwin Gatchalian is recognized. You have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Magandang umaga po sa lahat. Morning to our resource persons. I'm with the IATF and the government to improve vaccine confidence in our country. In fact, nakita ko po to General when I go around Valenzuela. Isa po sa mga tinatanong ko to our constituents kung sino magpapabakuna. And to the survey, only 50% would always raise their hands. No? That's reflective in the Pulse Asia survey of 47%. So I'm with you in increasing vaccine confidence here in our country. However, there are a lot of questions that I cannot answer myself whenever asked by constituents, especially from news reports coming out of the internet, from international news agencies regarding different types of vaccines, especially vaccines that were mentioned in this hearing and also in press conferences. One of these vaccines, and na-mention na ho to kanina, ay yung Sinovac. No? And in many of the news reports, and I want to ask this to Secretary Duque and also later on to Dr. Lulu Bravo, who's an expert in vaccination. In many of the news reports that I saw, the efficacy rates vary per different countries. No? For example, po sa Brazil, the efficacy rate of Sinovac is 50%. In Turkey, it's 91%. Then in Indonesia, it's 65%. And then in Chile, it's above 90%. So paiba-iba po, no? So from a layman, no, I don't claim to be an expert. I just read a lot from the internet and news report. From a layman po, parang unstable po yung efficacy rate nito. So I just want to ask Secretary Duque to explain this as simple as possible. And later on to Dr. Lulu to explain it also as simple as possible, because from our point of view, you know, being ordinary citizens who doesn't have background in this type of vaccination, it seems to me that this type of drug is quite unstable and the efficacy varies. So I want to ask Secretary Duque, how do you explain this to our constituents?
Your Honor, if I may just refer the question to the FDA Director General, Dr. Eric Domingo.
Sige po, go ahead.
Yes. Mr. Senator, Mr. President, nung po kasing 2 days ago, nag-submit na po yung Sinovac nung kanilang phase 3 trials. And then they submitted po tatlo, no, yung sa Brazil, sa Turkey, at saka sa Indonesia. Although these are preliminary reports, at saka mabilis ko lang pong nabasa, no, hindi ko pa po talaga nakita na himay. Pero nung nakita ko po, ang pagkakaiba, kaya iba-iba rin po yung efficacy, iba-iba po yung target population. Yun pong sa Brazil, ginawa siya sa healthcare workers. Pero yung sa Indonesia, and yung sa Turkey ginawa po sa general population. Meron din po akong napansin na konting pagkakaiba yung mga age group na kasama doon sa mga study per country. So these things, factors like this can affect the efficacy rates and the outcomes and the results of a study. At yun po, maaari po yung gamitin kung paano rin ang indication, kung kanino siya pwedeng gamitin at kanino hindi. Pero since kadarating nga lang po nung kanilang preliminary reports, na isubmit na po namin ito sa mga expert kahapon, and I asked them for an assessment within 1 week. So ito pong mga eksperto talaga natin sa infectious disease, sa vaccination, tsaka po sa mga epidemiology, sila po yung sumusuri ngayon para nga po makita kung ano ba talagang ibig sabihin ng pagkakaiba. Pero initially po yun ang nakita ko, talaga pong yung iba-ibang bansa, medyo iba-iba po yung may pagkakaiba po dun sa study design. And we expect na pag iba po yung study design, maaring iba-iba po yung resulta.
Director, talking about study design, no? Will we conduct our own study design or are we going to rely on these submissions to us? No? Because kung iba-iba, then iba-iba rin po yung what you're saying, study design. Are we going to conduct our own series of study designs to come up with our own analysis?
Well, the government po is not going to conduct clinical trials for the product. However, if they do have an arm that's going, like Sinovac is having a clinical trial phase 3 here in the country, yun po magagamit din po talaga natin sa yung datos nun in evaluating. But not all products or vaccines are required to do their clinical trial phase 3 here in the Philippines.
What will make you require them to do phase 3?
Well, hindi naman po required, pero kung halimbawa hindi po pumasa yung kanilang produkto, ang mga datos hindi pumasa, then they can opt to do phase 3 here para po mas makakumpleto sila. No? Pero I think po si Dr. Montoya po ng PCHRD has more information on this.
Go ahead po.
Your Honor, regarding the question of the study trial design will be determined by us. The normal process po is determined by the vaccine developer precisely because it is based on several points. First, it depends on how they will market or they want to target a particular population or sector. Then they design the study in accordance to that particular target population. The second one is it's also dependent po on the number of trial sites involved. So usually po, they combine the populations that are where they conduct the clinical trials in different countries and they come up with the overall efficacy. That is, of course, based on the assumption that they have a uniform trial design with the same target population. And if they're dealing with different target populations, they usually disaggregate. Ang isip ko na disaggregate, pinag-iwa-hiwalay po nila based on age group and determine the efficacy and the safety along these lines. Thank you po.
So in this particular case po, for example, Sinovac, they're conducting phase 3 clinical trials. And aantayin ba ho natin matapos ho yan bago niyo bigyan ng authorization?
Not necessarily, Mr. Senator. If, for example, po yung studies nila in Indonesia and Turkey, which have very similar designs, pag pinagsama ay makakakuha naman tayo ng datos to support safety and efficacy, then maaari na po yun. And then as they continue with their clinical trials, including more age groups, for example, more special patients, then pwede pong nare-revise yung kanyang authorization at nadadagdagan po tayo ng mga indications at contraindications para po din sa bakuna.
Wouldn't be for this Sinovac po, hindi ba mas magiging mas prudent, no? Kung aantayin na lang ho natin yung phase 3 bago ho bigyan ng authorization, considering po na paiba-iba po yung mga lumalabas po sa news report?
Hindi ko po kasi ma-preempt yung evaluation ng ating mga expert dun sa mga natapos na study. No? If the studies that have been completed, that have been reported, are not convincing enough, hindi naman po natin yan papayagan. No? Pero yun nga po kasi kasasubmit lang, I would like to give our experts a few days to take a look at it and to see if with the current data, we have enough evidence to show that using the vaccine, the benefits will outweigh the risk and that it might be useful in the fight against COVID.
Will it be, meron po bang scenario na you will be giving them an authorization but the clinical trials, itong phase 3 clinical trials will yield to a different result?
Yes, sir. In fact, all of the emergency use authorizations now are based on information to date. Meaning, kung ano po yung nalalaman natin, nasa kalagitnaan po sila ng kanilang phase 3 clinical trials. Pero nakikita naman po natin na useful at maganda ang efficacy at safety ng isang bakuna. Pero ang requirement po nun, i-complete nila yung kanilang phase 3 until they are able to register the product. So it is possible that we will unmask some more things that we have to watch out for, and possible din po talaga na merong makita na in the end na maaaring maging dahilan para i-revoke ang kanyang EUA. Talaga pong continuing process po talaga, ginagamit lang natin siya kasi may emergency.
Ito po ang I'm trying to understand, Director. Kung mabibigyan na ho siya ng EUA, pero nagtutuloy pa rin po yung clinical trials niya, tapos nakikita ho natin na paiba-iba po yung lumalabas yung news report, hindi ba mas maayos kung antay na lang ho natin yung clinical trials?
Well, yun nga po, titinan po ng experts natin. Pero kasi po, kung hihintayin po natin matapos lahat ng clinical trials at baka register po ang mga kumpanya ng bakuna bago natin gamitin, baka 2023, 2024 pa po tayo makakapagbakuna. Kaya po tayo nagbibigay ngayon ng emergency authority para lang po may magamit na tayo ngayon dahil kahit nasa kalagitnaan pa, as long as the data supports efficacy and safety.
Mr. Chairman, can I, with your permission, if I can just add to broaden the understanding po of efficacy. Yung efficacy po ng bakuna, apat po ang atin layunin. Number one is to reduce or prevent mortality or deaths. Reduction in the symptomatic cases. Ibig sabihin yung symptoms ng ubo, respiratory distress, fever, cough. Yung isa po is reduction of asymptomatic cases. And finally, yung isa po, para po mapigilan o maiwasan ang pagiging grabe ng mga sintomas into a severe case and prevent also hospitalization. I'll give you an example, ano po, nung aking po mga ibinigay na ito po yung panukatan kung ano ba yung clinical efficacy. I'm getting this from our technical advisory group member, Dr. Edson Salvania, when he presented this to us. No po. Halimbawa, sa bakuna laban sa COVID-19, ang AstraZeneca, Sinovac, Moderna, prevent 100% of severe disease occurrence. So maganda ho yung kanyang epekto pagdating sa preventing the severity of the disease. Yung Sinovac din po, lumalabas, but this is subject to a validation. Perhaps the vaccine expert panel, if there is a member on board, can confirm this. Para 78%, it can also prevent mild clinical disease. However, yung kanya pong overall efficacy, meron nga po nakalagay 50 to 91%, depending on kung may mga variables, saan po ginawa. May ibang clinical trial sa Brazil, may ginawa sa Indonesia, kung di po ako nagkakamali. At yung cohorts, kung halimbawa, ang clinical trial cohort nila, mga healthcare workers, syempre, yung exposure doon, iba than yung exposure in a general population. Ano po? Pero suffice it to say na yung pong mga bakunang ito, they have been ranked in terms of the four effects measuring or reflecting efficacy of a particular vaccine. Yun lang po. Salamat po.
Thank you, Secretary. Anyways, I'm just asking this from a layman point of view because I am trying to understand also the process and what will make FDA decide that Sinovac is safe for use here in our country. Just explain it as simple as possible. No? Considering again, I'm trying to go back and forth to that news reports because those are the ones being highlighted internationally. So, what will make FDA decide that Sinovac is safe for use?
So, Mr. Senator, yun po ang pag-emergency use, ang mga sinusundan natin na criteria. Number one, habang wala pa pong rehistradong produkto. Pangalawa, pag napakita na maaari siyang mag-prevent ng sakit. Pangatlo, if the benefits outweigh the risk. So number one, dapat po walang severe adverse events. Wala pong namamatay, wala pong nagkakasakit na nalulumpo. Yung po mga severe na kailangan pong mababago ang buhay. Pangalawa po, yun nga pong efficacy. Ang pamantayan po ng WHO, at least 50% efficacy, might be an acceptable vaccine kung maganda po ang safety profile. Pag naman po tayo naglabas ng EUA, may mga conditions po yon, Mr. Senator, no? Katulad po halimbawa ng Pfizer. Nakalagay po sa product information na kailangan mag-iingat tayo sa mga may allergy. Pagkatapos ngayon po, madadagdag na rin yung mga very elderly, tsaka frail or maraming sakit. So halimbawa po, yung Sinovac, kung sakali man po na makita sa health workers ay 50% lang ang efficacy niya, pero sa community 70 to 90%. Then possible na may mga ganun din pong kondisyon na maaring gamitin ito sa mga community na mababa ang transmission pero hindi siya para sa mga health worker na very high risk. So ganun po ang ating mga nagiging pag-aaral. Pero yun nga po, hinihintay ko pa rin po talaga yung evaluation ng experts natin kasi kabibigay ko lang po sa kanila ng studies kahapon.
Ilan araw ho bago lumabas yung decision?
Ang ano ko po unang-una kasi ang problema po natin sa Sinovac at yung ibang mga aplikante natin, wala pa po silang EUA galing sa mga stringent regulatory authority katulad po ng America, US FDA or UK na nasala na sila usually at may question and answer na pong binibigay sa amin. So ito po parang first, talagang parang tayo pa lang ang nakakakita. So binibigyan ko po talaga sila muna ng 1 week to take a look at the data and then we will meet and then collate all of the questions and clarifications that we want to ask the proponent. Ngayon, depende po sa bilis ng aplikante na sumagot sa mga katanungan na maibalik po sa ating mga expert para makita po nila kung na-clarify na po yung kanilang mga katanungan and then based on that, they can make a decision.
Typically ho, for in this type of case, gaano po katagal yan, Director?
Kapag po sa mga stringent regulatory authority, katulad po ng mga meron ng US FDA, UK FDA, kaya po ng mga 2 weeks yan 1 week and then interim question and answer, then another week. Pag po ganitong medyo mas mabusisi tayo, of course, it might extend a little longer kung may additional questions pa po na darating.
The reason why I asked, because in the previous hearings, I looking at the transcript, we were made to understand that by February 20, padating na ho yung Sinovac, or at least it's part of the package na dadating ho dito. Kung 2 weeks to 3 weeks po approval, hindi ho aabot yung authorization. Ibig sabihin, dadating na ho dito yung vaccine, pero wala pa ho yung authorization. So, paano ho natin gagawin to, no? Because obviously, andito na ho yung vaccine. If we're talking about millions of vaccines, which ang target is 25 million, but I think 50,000 yata initially, no? How do we reconcile this? And I also throw that to General Galvez, no?
Sir, Your Honors, we have made a presentation that in case that the application of a certain vaccine is not yet approved, we will not administer. Meaning our policy is that all vaccines that we will procure will be selected by our panel expert, and all of those vaccines that will be administered, it should apply. It should have at least the pathway of the FDA. So yun po yung lahat po ng vaccine na pupunta po dito sa bansa, kailangan po selected po ng ating vaccine expert. At the same time, it is approved by the FDA. So kung meron po tayong delivery na February 20, it will be delayed until such time that the FDA approval has been cleared.
General Secretary, what you're saying is Sinovac will not be delivered until the authorization will come out.
Yes, sir, Your Honor.
My other question ho is on Pfizer, and I know that Pfizer's representative is here. And again, another big news report that came out was that incident in Norway, wherein 29 elderly people died after taking the vaccine. And I know that Pfizer was just approved or given the authorization. So I just want to ask again, Director, from your expert opinion, no, and your experience, is this something to fear among us ordinary citizens who don't understand vaccination and complicated medicine? Ano ho ang pwede ho nating sabihin to our constituents? Because, of course, I know Pfizer is part of the COVAX package. And if that will be rolled out initially, then these questions will be thrown at us. No? So what do we answer to our constituents?
Yes, Mr. Senator. Well, ito naman po yung ano rin, maganda sa flexibility po ng EUA since we know that the product is still under development and ongoing po yung kanyang pag-aaral. As we get information, then we get to adjust and change the product information and the use indications for use of the product. Kamukha po nung Pfizer, nung nag-umpisa po ito, hindi naman po kasama yung severe allergies and anaphylaxis things to watch out for. Pero ngayon na na-inject na siya sa mahigit 5 milyong tao sa buong mundo, kasama na po ngayon siya. Pag nag-roll out po tayo dito sa Pilipinas, kasama po iyon na kailangan mag-ingat tayo for allergies and that sa site ng ating injection sites, kailangan may capability tayo to manage possible anaphylaxis. Ngayon po ito nangyari sa Norway, nanghingi na rin po tayo ng report from Pfizer. And the Norway Medicines Agency said that ang nangyari po kasi sa Norway, doon po sa mga homes for the elderly nila, na very, very elderly po talaga, no? Marami pong namamatay. Linggo-linggo, 400 ang namamatay. Dahil mga iba po dito, end of life, terminally ill, and then marami pong mga sakit. So, ang naging strategy po ng gobyerno, pinag-i-inectionan po nila lahat, no? Kahit matanda, kahit marami ng sakit. So, nabawasan po yung deaths nila, pero meron nga po silang nakitang more than 23 deaths na malapit po dun sa actual injection. So, ang kanila pong tingin ay baka yung mga mild, no? Mga mild na symptoms like mga lagnat at saka ubo at saka yung pagkahilo na kaya ng malusog na tao, baka kung talagang marami kang sakit at matanda ka na, it's enough to to cause you more illness and die. So ngayon po kasama hindi po dito tumigil ang Norwegian government sa pagbabakuna sa matanda, pero meron na pong dagdag ngayon na caution lamang in the very elderly and those who have a lot of diseases and who are very frail. So magiging ganun din po sa atin kapag po tayo nagbakuna na, ang Department of Health mag-iingat na po doon sa matatanda talaga at saka may sakit. Sila po ay i-exclude na po natin sa pagbabakuna.
Director, patanong po ni Senator Lacson also on this topic is the case of overdose. No, because obviously mga matatanda ho to, and I would assume there's only so much that they can take. Now, I'm not an expert again, but is that a possibility that they were given excess amounts of vaccine that led to their deaths?
Hindi naman po. Yung dosing po, nasiset yun sa phase 2 trial pa lamang. So before it even goes to the phase 3 trial, napi-fix na po yung dose at nahanap na po yung effective dose na walang without the risk of going to adverse events because of the too high na dose. So mukhang hindi po siya dose related, it's really related to the age and frailty of the patients.
President, with the permission of Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, ano po yung effect, yung worst effect ng overdose? Say sa halip na pang 1 dose, di ba 2 doses yan na may pagitan ng mga 14 to 21 days. So kung halimbawa sa first dose, sa halip na 1 dosage lang yung naituro, na nagka-doble, human error. Ano po yung pinaka-worst na pwede mangyari do sa recipient ng inoculation?
Bibigay ko po kay Dr. Montoya, siya po infectious disease specialist.
Kasi these things can happen, di ba? Kasi pag inaantok yung nurse o yung technician, pwede mangyari yon. So, malaman lang natin, ano yung pinaka-worst na pwede mangyari doon sa tao?
Your Honor, if I may answer the question. As was already mentioned by Director General Domingo, once the vaccine has already finished phase 1 and phase 2 clinical trial. They've already established the limits of safety. And usually, pag sinabi po natin safety, they usually multiply the dose 100 times until they see toxicity. And then they stop. So they know the toxicity level. So makakalusot po yan kapag yung toxicity level is parang cannot happen in real life. Kumbaga thousands of times the recommended dose. So ito po ay unlikely na mangyari. Salamat po.
Wait, Dr. Montoya. What Senator Lacson is asking is the layman's question of ang dose, papalagay natin ganitong karami, 1 dose. Ang naibigay sa'yo, mahigit 1 dose. 1.5. Kasi like for example, there are vaccines that in one vial, there are 5 doses. Di ba? There are many doses in other, depende kung anong vaccine eh. So, meron na 5 doses. Kukuha ngayon yung nurse o yung doktor doon. Pagkuha ng hiringgilya, sobra. Kasi pitik-pitik pa yun. Alisin yung hangin. Sobra yung nailagay. Sobra ngayon ang naisaksak sa'yo. Ano effect? Yan ang tanong.
Your Honor, as far as safety is concerned, the theoretical possibility is that kung ikaw ay walang allergy doon sa particular vaccine, kapag po masyadong tinaasan ng dose, maaaring lumabas yung allergy nyo. That's a possibility. Pero yung epekto po sa antibody production, wala po. Because napag-alaman na rin base sa mga phase 1 and phase 2 studies, kahit i-increase nyo pa yung dose ng bakuna, ang epekto po ay ganun pa rin. Kaya they actually identified kung ano po yung tamang dose talaga na ibibigay, na walang added benefit kung tataasan mo pa. So kung sa side effect po is baka allergy, pwede po yun. Baka lumabas po yung allergy nyo kapag masyadong mataas na yung dose. Pero bukod po doon ay wala po tayong nalalaman na iba pang epekto sa ngayon.
So, safe naman kung let's say sobra ng konti or kulang ng konti yung dose na binigay sa'yo. Technically, wala kayong alam na problema.
Opo.
Alright. Pero iba na talaga yung exact dose.
Yung po tinatawag na optimum dose. Dahil yung po yung sinasabi natin na looking at the safety at saka yung efficacy po na ability to produce antibodies, yun po yung na-identify nila na optimum o yung pinakamagandang dose to produce the desired effect.
Mr. President,
Senator Gatchalian.
just a brief interjection with the
Go ahead,
indulgence of
with the permission of Senator Gatchalian, Senator Tiveros. Go ahead.
Mr. President, and salamat sa good gentleman from Valenzuela. I think yung isa pang important issue na ina-underline nung tanong ni Senator Tin ay na magkakaroon tayo ng sapat na bilang ng mga qualified na vaccinators. I think wala tayong problema dun sa core of vaccinators ng Department of Health dahil sa long-standing established capacity nila sa expanded program on immunization. Pero ang iba dito ngayon ay yung dami ng mga Pilipino na mababakunahan. First time ever na tens of millions ang ita-target nating mabakunahan natin. So, yung importansya ng training ng mas marami pang mag-assist sa core of vaccinators ng DOH para isagawa ng maayos with less human error nitong vaccination program natin. Salamat, Mr. President, at salamat, Senator Sherwin.
Thank you, Senator Risa. Just to end my question on the efficacy, Director, it's just my point here is it's very hard to explain to our constituents when they see all these news reports coming out. And ang hirap po talaga, especially, for example, if you have the case of Sinovac, may 50%, may 60%, may 90%. So a lot of will be trusting FDA to do its job and its mandate of making sure that this has been reviewed and it will not be pressured because the stocks will be coming in soon. Yun po yung ating punto. And again, I'm with you in raising the confidence to vaccination, but all these news reports are not helping that confidence. And the only way we can allay the fears, sasabihin na lang ho namin sa constituents namin just to trust FDA. and it will do its job. No? But that's why I'm asking all of these very simple questions, and I'm trying to get simple answers also so that our constituents can understand the process.
Yes, Mr. Senator, makakaasa naman po kayo, kami datos lamang at saka scientific evidence lamang ang aming sinusunod sa pag-evaluate. Hindi po kung saan nanggaling, kung magkano, at yun ating po mga experts talaga pong bihasa dyan. And once we come up naman po with a decision, we explain it to the public, and nakikipagtrabaho naman po kami kasama ng DOH to be able to communicate para po maintindihan nila kung ano pong ibig sabihin ng desisyon na binigay natin at yung mga efficacy rates po na iyon.
Thank you, Director. To General Galvez, General Secretary, I know for a fact that the private sector now is taking orders, no, or taking bookings for vaccines. And I'm quite confused because sa local government po, meron din ho silang bookings. Like for example, sa Valenzuela ho, meron ho kaming close to about 400,000 doses. But then again, yung business sector ho namin, kumukuha ho rin sila, no, nung vaccines or bumibili ho sila. How do you reconcile this? Because at the end of the day, or at the end of this exercise, bumibili ho kami sa mga manggagawa ho namin. Sila rin ho bumibili sa manggagawa ho nila. Bakit magsobra-sobra ho tayo at the end? Because dalawa hong organisasyon bumibili ho ng vaccine. So how do you reconcile this, General?
Sir, Your Honor, sir, during our last meeting, nag-usap-usap po ang mga mayors, League of Mayors at saka League of Provincial Governors. Yung nga po ang sinabi po namin na dapat integrate po sa LGU yung lahat ng mga orders, considering that in the end, it is the LGU that will implement with the DOH the inoculation program. So ang ano po namin, ang recommendation po namin sa kanila is they should have some sort of public-private partnership at the local level, and then they will have an integrated orders through the provincial governor para po isahan lang po yung kakausapin, at the same time hindi po maguguluhan yung manufacturer. And they agreed na parang ang mangyayari po, sir, is instead of tripartite, parang quadripartite na with the agreement with the private sector, the LGU, the vaccine maker, and the national government.
General, will you release any circular to that effect? Because I suggest that we should make the local government as the gatekeeper for just to count, no, not to come up with funds, but just to make sure that we're not double counting or buying in excess. Dahil sa experience ko lang ho, no, because I can, to be honest about it, yung mga private sector ho namin, alam ko, dami yung bumibili eh. In the private sector, they also buy for their families, they also buy for their friends. So hindi lang ho sa manggagawa ho nila, kung hindi sa mga kamag-anak at mahal sa buhay. At nakita ho namin, kasi binilang ho namin yung kanilang employees eh, kasama ho sa count. So nagkaka-double counting. So my fear is, baka magkaroon tayo ng sobra-sobra at the end. No? And ang tanong ko, pwede ba natin isoli ho itong sobra kung nagkaroon ho ng sobra?
Sir, may we have the representative from the DILG?
Yeah, Mr. President,
yes,
Mr. Senator. We already issued out an advisory 3 or 4 days ago to all local government units that for all municipalities and component cities who intend to set aside funds, you know, for purposes of acquiring or procuring the vaccines, they have to coordinate with the provincial government for purposes of consolidation. So for component cities and municipalities, it's the provincial government who will consolidate the procurement. For highly urbanized cities and independent component cities, they are allowed to enter already and negotiate and enter into a tripartite agreement with the supplier, but with the presence of the national government. So all tripartite agreements will still involve the national government. And in that advisory, as agreed with the Department of Health and our vaccine czar, they are only, at least initially, required to procure only 50% of their requirement for the local government unit, particularly so that some of the funds may continue to be used for other anti-COVID-19 activities,
And that, yun po, yung binabanggit natin, at the end of the day, it's really the responsibility of the national government to procure all the vaccines para hindi rin nila ma-solo yung ibang requirements. So instead na mapunta sa ibang mga local government na walang kapabilidad na bumili, hindi ma-solo ng mga may pera. And again, doon naman sa may pera at makaka-procure, we agreed that some of those vaccines allotted for the highly urbanized cities who are able to procure will be reallocated to the smaller LGUs who are not capable of procuring the vaccines.
You sex the private sector, how do you reconcile? No? For example, again, Valenzuela, we have a lot of factories. I know the factories are already buying or booking vaccines, and we're also booking vaccines for the same constituent. So how do you reconcile that?
Mr. President, Mr. Senator, this is the reason why we also issued a memorandum circular where we already directed all local government units to generate their master list, including the names based on the priority sectors we've identified. Again, frontline healthcare workers, senior citizens, indigents, uniformed personnel, and essential workers. So with that listing, we can now reconcile together with the listing that we have with the Department of Health, including that of the private sector, para hindi ho magkadoble-doble. Ang iniiwasan po natin dito ay yung inabanggit at ito'y occurring in other countries na merong mga bumili at nasayang po yung bakuna. In fact, I read an article that in France, more or less 30% of their estimated procured vaccines were turned into waste kasi po hindi nagamit. And gusto nating iwasan din po yan.
Kasi parang nagkakaroon ng panic buying and everyone want to book or secure their vaccines, but at the end, baka nagkakadoble-doble. So I just want to flag the good secretary about our experience, and this is experience in Valenzuela and also in the private sector, and just to make sure that we have a mechanism to reconcile all of this volume. Kasi laki yung allocation na allocate natin, 82 billion for that matter, and baka sobra-sobra na ho yung nabili ho natin.
Sir, actually, sir, yung sinasabi namin sa mga local government units during our information drive is really they have to coordinate with the private sector also, and also to provide private hospitals so that they can reconcile their priority sectors. If in case that the LGU will not be able to cover essential workers from the private sector, now the private sector that can come in. So yun po ang ginagawa po sa namin. At saka sinasabi po namin sa lahat ng mga LGUs that the President has already ordered us to procure the vaccines for all Filipinos. And they told them that if we have already ordered or more or less 148 dosage for the different 7 companies. And for them, I told them that those municipalities we call it level 4 up to yung yung tinatawag nating mga categories na mga municipalities na talagang wala pong pondo, wag na po silang mag-aaksaya po ng pondo nila na gamitin po nila yun sa kanilang mga kanilang mga importanteng mga pangangailangan. So yung mga nag-volunteer lang po ay yung mga tinatawag nating highly urbanized cities with larger population. Kasi nakita po nila na in order to have yung additional volumes, yung time element on their inoculation will be shortened. That's our intention, that we can have a bigger volume available at the soonest possible time. But for all intention purposes, we told them that the LGU should just wait for baka mauna po sir yung procurement ng national government actually. So yung inano po namin, sinasabi po natin sa kanila na hina-hina lang sa kanilang mga pondo, na talagang at least yung bilhin lang nila is yung sa mga essential and priority sector lang po ang po nila. Because the government will provide all the vaccines.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next is Senator Tolentino. You have 10 minutes, Senator Tolentino.
Thank you, Mr. President. Maraming salamat po. Siguro naman po si Director Domingo, Secretary Duque, alam niyo po yung contents ng privilege speech ko nung isang araw Kung wala po, may I request, Mr. President, that the two gentlemen be given copies of my privilege speech. Hindi po yung paninira sa inyo. Ang gusto ko pong palabasin doon, naguluhan talaga. Wala naman po sa batas na nakalagay na emergency use authorization, not even in your implementing rules. Wala rin po yung DEU. Noong una, ginagamit nyo DEU, naging EUA na. So, kalimutan na po natin yon. I read something positive from Secretary Duque. You are encouraging the Senate to pass an amendment to the FDA law, incorporating therein a provision for emergency use authorization. I have a draft with me. I'll provide you a copy. I'll file this either today or Monday. So, ayusin na lang natin yan. Tanong ko na lang po sa World Health Organization, naguluhan na rin po ako. Meron naman bagong uli ngayon, EUL naman, emergency use listing. Can a representative of WHO clarify what EUL is? Wala pong nakakala kung ano yung
Kung
EUL.
wala po sila, pwede ko naman pong sagutin, Mr. President. Ang WHO po kasi hindi siya regulatory agency. Hindi naman po siya nagla-license or nag-authorize ng produkto. So ang mga FDA, katulad po natin, US FDA, yung mga NMPA ng China, ng Japan, tayo po ang nagbibigay ng authorization or registration. Kaya tawag po natin EUA. Ang WHO, since hindi naman po sila regulator, kung titignan po nila yung produkto, pag sumunod sa standards, sinasama po nila doon sa emergency use list nila. Yun po ang listahan ng mga produkto na maaari pong i-consider ng mga iba-ibang pamahalaan para gamitin.
You, Director General Domingo, pero I have here a copy of a very thick EUL document coming from World Health Organization dated December 13, 2020. Lumabas po ngayon sa Philippine Star. Yun daw pong mga bansa na hindi maganda ang regulatory regime, hindi alam pa kung paano mag-process, ang mag-i-issue na raw po ng authorization is WHO. Tama po ba yan?
Ang ano po kasi meron po tayo tinatawag na
Read the Philippine Star today.
na recognition, no? So ang mga bansa po na kasapi sa WHO, they may opt na kapag po sinama na sa emergency use list ng WHO, automatically tatanggapin na rin po nila.
So wala kayong pinaplanong ganon?
Tayo po sa ngayon wala. Nag-recognize po tayo ng kanilang decision. Ginagamit po nila natin ito sa evaluation natin. But we don't automatically recognize at this time.
Kasi si Bangladesh, marami nang tatanggapin bakuna, EUL ata ang gagamitin. Pero lipat na tayo sa ibang kwento, General. Secretary Galvez, yung COVAX Gavi natin, yung darating donation.
Sa ngayon po sir, wala pong definite na rollout. Ang ano po lang nila is first quarter po, ang ano po nila. But they already accepted yung
But that's free.
Yes, sir.
Si Secretary Duque, on the other hand, the other day was quoted, ito yung ibahagi rin ng privilege speech ko, tungkol doon sa donation ng Sinovac. It would now appear that aside from procurement, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman, donation is another vehicle. Am I correct?
Yes, Your Honor, Mr. Chairman. Tama po.
Yung i-donate ay yung meron ng EUA.
Tama po kayo, Your Honor.
And we are now referring to Pfizer and probably Sinovac.
Yes, Your Honor. Pero yung Sinovac, wala pa ho tayong EUA niyan. Nag-submit pa lang ng kanilang mga datos para suriin naman ang ating mga vaccine expert panel.
Our job here is to reconcile all existing laws and regulations and flash on the screen provisions of the Civil Code of the Philippines relating to donations, a provision coming from the National Internal Revenue Code relating to donations. And I'd like to congratulate the Senate. Senate office, hindi ko kilala to Mr. President, pero napakagaling nila. Senate Tax Study and Research Office, they gave me a report. I'd like, Mr. President, to have all our colleagues have a copy of this. Napakaganda po nung sinabi nila. So ganito po yung punto ko ngayon. Allowed ang donation. Secretary Duque? Allowed because you just
Ang
mentioned.
donation po? Yes, sir.
So kung nakikinig si Secretary Lacson, we have hundreds of bilateral treaties. Perhaps one shining treaty is with India, and they have a serum institute. Am I correct na naglalabas na ng vaccine? Kung maglalabas po kung magdodonate po ang isang bansa, sana mag-respond si Secretary Lacson, at ito po ay may EUA, tatanggapin po natin?
Well, maaari po siyang tanggapin at maaari pong gamitin dito sa Pilipinas.
Maraming. I have here several laws in front of me, including the Customs Modernization and Tariff Act, Republic Act 10863. I have here latest circulars coming from the DSWD. You can check on this. Ma'am, bilis kasi ng oras, Mr. Oh, hindi na ako nagsasalita, gumagal. I have here latest circulars from the NDRIMC, OCD. I have here pertinent provisions of the EDCA, Visiting Forces Agreement. I have here pertinent provisions of the Customs and Tariff Code. Iisa-isahin ko. Pinayagan na natin ang donation. Pero ang tingin ko, Secretary Duque, you should now craft your circular relative to the minimum number of vials or doses that can enter the country. We have that.
Wala pa pong volume thresholds, Your Honor, Mr. Chairman.
Po sinasabi yan, sa Cavite po, meron kaming Cavite Association of California. What would prevent the Cavite Association of California from donating a big bulk of doses of Pfizer, for instance, to the municipality of Naik, Cavite? Tax-free. What would prevent the Rotary Club of Oakland, California from donating a big bulk of vaccines likewise to the Rotary Club of Makati?
Yes, Your Honor. Unang-una po, lilinawin lang po natin na wala pong commercial use authorization itong mga ito. Lahat po ito dadaan ng emergency use authorization.
It's not commercial.
So,
It's not commercial. It's for the utilization of the donee, which is allowed under the customs, the modern customs and tariff code, and even the National Internal Revenue Code, and DSWD circulars, which I mentioned a while ago.
Mr. Chairman, can I just defer to the FDA DG?
Mr. Chair, Mr. President, pag po kasi dumating siya sa customs, paggamot siya, hahanapan po siya ng customs ng clearance. Kung may CPR siya, kung may EUA siya. Hindi po siya papapasukin dito kung wala. Ang mangyayari po pag ganoon, i-refer po sa Department of Health, yung Bureau of International Health Cooperation. Tapos ang Department of Health po ngayon ang maaaring tumanggap ng donation, no, para po dun sa LGU, and the DOH will then apply for a permit from FDA for an emergency use.
Ang alam ko po, yung EUA, isang beses lang i-issue yan. Pag na-issuehan mo na ng EUA yan, Pfizer for instance, continuing na yan. Hindi lahat ng donation, EUA ka ng EUA. Isang application, isang approval. Tama po ba yan?
Kaya since meron na po siyang EUA, yung EUA po kasi na halimbawa inilabas ko po sa Pfizer, very specific po 'yon, no? Kung sa factory sa Kalamazoo siya galing, itong batch number, itong lot number. Ngayon since alam naman po natin yung ng produkto may EUA na, idadaan lamang naman po sa DOH.
Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Yan po kasi ang factory ng ng Pfizer.
Ibig sabihin, isang beses ka lang mag-EUA and I can expand broadly. I can have an international agreement between the city of Valenzuela and the city of Detroit in Michigan. Ganun din yun. I can have an international agreement ng MMDA ako between MMDA and Gyeonggi Province in South Korea. Meron ding vaccine ng South Korea. So, ang ibig ko po sabihin, bawat donation ni EUA. Hindi naman siguro ganun.
Pero kukunan po kasi, Mr. Senator, ng clearance from FDA, titingnan natin yung papeles kung totoo po bang yung bakuna na yun. Yun pong gawa talaga ng Pfizer yon, galing talaga doon sa factory yon, at na-handle po siya properly. So, basta po, hindi po, kahit po hindi siya commercial, kung medyo marami po yan, talaga po hihingan ng clearance po ng customs.
To craft the regulations. Ganitong kaaga pa lang. Because I foresee an event returning resident coming in, for instance, from the United States, bringing with her or with him a box load of vaccines. Moderna, for instance, kung nagka-EUA na, naka-dry ice yun, tatagal ng 30 days. So mapasok sa Pilipinas, anong gagawin? Uhulihin ng customs, itatapon, kailangan ng mga kamag-anak nila. At this early stage, you should craft the regulations.
Senate, with the permission of Senator Tolentino, pursuing the subject, Senator Lacson.
On the same topic, because this is a very good point, ano? Ang understanding ko po, and correct me if I'm wrong, pagka ito may EUA sa isang bansa na merong stringent regulatory agency na nag-issue, pasado na sa atin. That's the protocol. Now, a case in point, Pfizer, meron ng EUA sa Amerika. Yung example ni Senator Francis, nag-donate yung Association ng Caviteños sa California doon sa Cavite. Pfizer, may EUA. Kailan pa rin dumaan sa Department of Health? Kailan pa rin dumaan sa FDA?
Hinihingan pa rin po ng clearance ng customs kasi
Yeah, customs kasi tax-free eh. Pero I understand na meron kailangan mga documents pa na mga requirements even for donated items. But dito lang muna sa aspeto ng health, yung protocol. Ang sabi niyo po kanina, and you just confirmed it, na pag may EUA na na-issue, yung bansa na pinanggalingan at nag-manufacture, carried na para bang tanggap na natin. Iba-validate natin, of course.
Hindi po, Mr. Senator. Ibig sabihin, pag may EUA na po dito sa atin.
Pero di ba pagka may EUA doon sa tinatawag yung merong stringent regulatory agencies na nagbigay ng EUA, parang sabihin na natin para sa anti-terror law, yung tinatawag na designation, pag designated na ng United Nations Security Council based on the Resolution 1317, parang automatic na sa ATC, Anti-Terrorism Council, na mag-issue na ng designation.
Well, sa atin po, Mr. Senator, hindi po siya automatic. No? We
Hindi
take
automatic.
into consideration the EUA na
Standard
binigay
ninyo.
po. Opo, tas
I'm sorry. Ano po standard ninyo kung meron ng EUL or EUA from a country na pasado yung regulatory agency dahil stringent?
So, ang dagdag lang po na hinihingi natin na requirements, number one, may country-specific po sila.
Yun nga.
Na risk management plan, kailangan po yung may stability study sila showing na pag dinala galing Kalamazoo o Belgium at dumating dito, stable pa rin siya.
Hindi po, US na nga eh. Specific na siya.
Meron pa rin, kasi nga po kukuha siya ng EUA sa Pilipinas. Kailangan ma-prove niya na stable din pag nakarating dito sa Pilipinas yung produkto. Pagkatapos po yung Asian data, hinihingi po natin, pinapahiwa. Kasi sa US po, syempre, tiningnan nila pang kalahatan. So we just ask for a little more details before we give our own EUA.
Pero okay yung donation. Private to private, NGO to NGO.
Yun nga po, pero usually po hinihingan po talaga ng clearance yan, no, ng FDA clearance. And ang DOH po ang nanghihingi ng clearance sa FDA. Dahil health products po siya.
Question, again, with the indulgence of Senator Tolentino, kasi importante po ito dahil marami mga associations na mga sisterhood, cityhood, di ba? Yung sister cities, di ba? Mga ganon. Nag-donate. Hindi ba impractical na idadaan yung goods sa DOH sa magdidistribute? Hindi ba mas impractical yung kaysa may EUA na naman na bayaan na lang gamitin diretso noong mapakinabang ang kagad. Wala na maraming storage kasi magdo-double handling pa tayo. Kung meron namang storage facility na pasado yung, like Baguio City for example, when we were meeting last Wednesday, nag-procure na sila ng cold storage, good for -70. Inunahan niya na kasi alam niya raw magmamahalan. And ito yung magandang foresight ng mga local government units. Umuna na sila, bumili na sila. Alam nila baka abutin pa ng yung demand, masyado mataas yung demand. Mamahalan pa sila. So, kung gano'n na situation, magdo-double handling tayo kasi dadaan tayo sa logistical requirements ng DOH, ng NTF, tapos itatransport na naman papunta sa LGU na pwede naman directly napunta yung donation. Please, Secretary Galvez.
Sir, may we have Yusek Marco Gov't to answer some the issues, and also we will.
Mr. Chair, so just to clarify, Yung SRA, one SRA requirement, that's a requirement for financing. Basically, that's imposed by the ADB. And 3 SRA for the World Bank. So that's separate from
There's no longer financial donation eh.
donation. Okay,
Donation.
yung donation on the sole issue of donation, we have to comply with the CMTA. So other than the EUA po, as you know, there's an import permit process for the importation of regulated goods. So in this case, this is a regulated good. So each importation should require
Yeah, pero emergency ito eh. Ang palagay ko naman, hindi ito dadaan sa dating bureaucratic procedure or process na ordinary donated goods like ukay-ukay.
Yes, sir.
Di ba?
Actually, the DOF is
Ang tanong ko lang, ba't kailangan i-circuitous pa yung daan? Dadali sa DOH, i-store, tapos saka i-redistribute pa sa LGUs. Samantalang donation niya ng Association ng Caviteños sa US, dinonate sa Cavite. Sige.
Sir, Your Honor, thank you very much for the recommendation, and we saw some of the gaps. Sir, we will make the simplest flow chart, considering that also that we will have our supply agreement with the manufacturer. Just in case we have already that kind of document, we can simplify and we can submit it to you, sir.
Ang purpose lang ng mga tanong ko, baka sakali may paraan naman tayo na ayusin natin yung sa halip na iikot pa, diretso na.
Yes, sir. Tama po kayo, sir. At tama po kayo dahil kasi yun din po ang gagawin po namin na kaya po na magkakaroon po kami ng time and motion na rehearsal para kung just in case na capable po yung LGU, pwede na po i-diretso ron para walang double handling.
Salamat. Ang point lang natin, wag sarado masyado yung utak natin, di ba? Pag may mga suggestions na lumalabas, sabihin lang natin, pag-aralan natin kung paano. Thank you, Senator Tolentino. Thank you, Mr. President. Good.
Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Lacson. Maganda yung mga to. Itatanong ko rin yun. So, pinahaba mo yung oras ko. And another hypothetical question to Secretary Duque or Director Domingo. Kanina pinag-usapan yung donations coming from abroad going to LGUs. Hospital to hospital. Hypothetical. Number 1 hospital in New York, Presbyterian New York Hospital in Manhattan, donates a bulk of vaccines to the Sanitarium Hospital in Pasay. Okay yan?
Maaari naman po yun. So, pag i-import lang, kukuha lamang naman po ng
Meron na kayong guidelines doon?
Meron naman po tayong guidelines for donation.
Can you provide?
Sige po. We will send you po the DOH and then the FDA guidelines po.
Kaya po ito, Secretary Duque, and expanding the VFA, expanding the our military agreement with the United States. For instance, Walter Reed Military Hospital in Maryland donates a bulk of vaccines to the Viluna Hospital in Quezon City. Meron tayong military agreement. Pwede ba yan? Daanin niyo pa ba sa customs? Eh, kung pinasok ng balikatan exercises dito, iiwan na lang nila. Nasa balikatan provisions, pwede sila mag-iwan ng items. Alam ni General Galvez yun. Paano na yan? Tulungan ko kayo at paano na yan?
Yes, sir. Maraming salamat po. At kailangan ho talagang makita po ito, gaya po na nabanggit kanina. Bukas naman po ang amin isip para mapalawig yung ating mga existing guidelines dahil po syempre kakaiba po ang panahon ngayon. So we will have to be nimble and flexible para lamang po hindi masayang yung mga bakuna kung dadaan sa bureaucratic red tape, ayaw po natin ng mga spoilers. So bukas po kami. Salamat po kung meron po kayo.
So ganitong kaaga pa lang, ayusin na siguro yung guidelines dito. Marami pa to. Binuksan kanina nung kahapon, nung inaano ko, si Mayor Olivares ng Parañaque. I-roll out na sa Metro Manila. Lahat sabay-sabay sila. Nakalimutan banggitin. Merong isang hindi financially capable, no, modesty aside na munisipyo kaysa isang munisipyo ng Metro Manila, Pateros. Pwede ba mag-donate ang Parañaque sa Pateros? Dadaan pa ba sa mga proseso na pampatagal na red tape? Nandito na sa Pilipinas.
Wala na po, pwede na po yun.
Donate kay Pateros, hindi galing sa abroad, dito na lang.
Pag nandito na po yung produkto tas authorized na po yun, maaari na po yung arrangements ng LGU to LGU.
Hindi na naman kailangan ng bagong EUA.
Hindi po.
Ako dun sa sinabi ko kanina, isang balikbayan, nag-uwi ng isang balikbayan box na vaccine para ibigay dun sa mga kamag-anak niya na kailangan na, nakapasok na rito.
Sa ngayon po kasi may threshold volume po tayo. Alam hindi po ako nagkakamali. Halimbawa, ang gamot for 1 month supply, o kaya 10 kilo. Parang ganun po. Meron po tayong ganun ng mga limits sa
Can
ngayon.
you be clear with that? Kasi para sa isang pamilya lang, nanggaling halimbawa ng Michigan, may isang kahong balikbayang box na Pfizer na dala para sa kanyang mga kamag-anak. Pwede yan? Hulihin nyo, itatapon nyo na lang.
Yun nga po yung thresholds. Padala ko na lang po sa office yung listahan natin ng thresholds po ng inaalaw po ng customs.
And again, I suggest to the FDA, take a look at the previous year's incorporation movements within the Securities and Exchange Commission. Sana po naimbitahan natin dito ang SEC. Ano-ano yung mga nagtayo ngayon? Itong buong pandemic, napakarami po nagtayo ng Vaccine Corporation, Pharmaceutical Distribution Corporation. We're not stifling the entrepreneurial capabilities of Filipinos. Ang iniiwasan natin dito is scam. Halimbawa po, may nagtayo halimbawa, kasi ngayon pwede na lang isang tao magtayo ng corporation. Pfizer, Swiss, Philippines, Vaccine Corporation. Na-accredit ninyo. Ano nang gagawin natin? How do you check all of this?
Pag po kukuha naman po kasi sila ng license to operate, no? After they incorporate, they get a license to operate from FDA. Pagkatapos po meron silang mga requirements na isasubmit, lalo na po kung mga manufacturing yan, meron po tayong mga site visit dyan, may factory inspection po bago natin issue yung kanilang LTO. Pero totoo po, dumami po ang, for example, manufacturer po ng alcohol, ng mga gamot na mga kinakailangan, dumami po ang importer ng mga medical devices like mga mask. Talaga pong yan, nito pong last year po talaga pong dumami po talaga sila ng gusto.
So isang magaling-galing na estapador, kung naman mangyari, naka-register dito, humingi, nakatanggap na yun ng donation na isang may EUA-approved vaccine. Paano nyo tatapatan ito?
Well, kailangan po may license to operate siya sa pharmaceutical, no, bago po niya maipasok.
Kalusot sa inyo, paano ngayon ito? Binanggit ko sa privilege speech ko, hinihigpitan natin lahat, pero napakatagal ng panahon, walang permit pala yung renal liver spread. Diba? Nakita niyo yun? Walang permit pala yung tiger balm for the last several decades. Hanggang ngayon, habang nagsasalita ako, walang permit yung Pantene shampoo. Diba? So, nagti tayo rito, maluwag tayo rito. Paano nyo matatakluban yung butas dito?
Well, yung pong mga Pantene naman po, tsaka yung tiger balm, certain variants lang naman po yung hindi nila registered. So, nagpa-register na po sila pati rito. So, pag po nahuli natin sila na they're going beyond their license or they're selling products na hindi po kasama sa kanilang license to operate, na po prosecute po natin yan at natatanggalan po natin sila ng lisensya.
So again, Mr. Chairman, yung mga binanggit ko at marami pa sana ito, lahat po ito ay nagbibigay nakakabahala sa mga mangyayari na baka hindi natin napaghandaan pa, na may panahon pa tayong paghandaan ngayon. Craft the necessary guidelines to prevent additional red tape, bureaucratic red tape, when donors would have to receive foreign donations. Sa batas, maliwanag lahat ito. Sa Customs and Tariff Code, National Internal Revenue Code, maging yung sa pag-solemnize ng mga dokumento sa mga Philippine Consular Offices. So dapat kakampi nyo rito yung, baliktarin mo yung FDA, DFA na, yung Department of Foreign Affairs, kung paano nyo mababalangkas ito. It's a very tough role for you, Director General Domingo, but what we're trying to attempt here is to really have a very positive regulatory regime which would aid the Filipinos. Hindi yun nangangapa tayo, dati ang tawag nyo DEU, ngayon EUA, we're filing a bill establishing, institutionalizing the EUA. So sana sa mga darating na panahon, maayos lahat ito. Wala po akong masyadong tanong na, Mr. Chairman. Gusto kong pasalamatan yung mga personalities here present, Secretary Dizon, Secretary Galvez, Secretary Duque, Secretary Director General Domingo. You've been here physically for the last several hearings, and we've been trying to cull from you important documents and important matters, some of whom are you recognize as confidential. We thank you for that. And again, my thesis here is just to help you, to aid all of us. Dapat po magtama-tama lahat ito. Napakahirap. We're not dealing here with just a pandemic. This is now a contagion, Secretary Duque. So Salamat, Mr. President. Hindi ko inubos yung oras ko. I still have 1 minute to go. Maraming salamat sa pagkakataong ito. Matanong ko ulit itong mga gentlemen na ito. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Tolentino. We go to the officers who are virtually present, but would like to acknowledge the presence of Senator Lapid virtually and Senator Recto, the President for them. Senator Recto is next. Senator Recto, you're recognized. You have 10 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, can I give the balance of my 1 minute to the next senator?
Yes, but I might not agree. Depends. He's online. Senator Recto is online, but there's no video. So let's jump to the next one before that, so that we can save time. Senator Subiri, the Majority Leader. It seems that most of the senators are satisfied with your explanations. Next is Senator Frank Rilon, the Minority Leader. You know, I'm tempted to follow the procedure of General Galvez. Pagka it's time for you to get your vaccine and you do not want it, you stay in the back of the line.
Mr. President,
The President Pro Tem is here. Senator Recto, go ahead.
yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Sorry for that. Sorry for being late. Mr. President, just a few questions I'd like to ask Secretary Galvez or Secretary Duque. First is, ilan ho na ba ang naturukan sa buong mundo? Secretary?
Sir, approximately more than 7 million, sir.
More than 7 million na ang naturukan. Okay. Ano yung which vaccine is the most widely used?
Sir, Pfizer.
Pfizer. Okay. Ano yung pangalawa?
We don't have the data, sir, but as we have heard, Moderna, sir.
Moderna. Meron ba tayong numero kung ilan sa 7 milyon, ilan yung sa Pfizer, ilan yung sa Moderna? Would we have that data?
Don't have the data yet, sir, but we can submit on Monday.
Yes. I'm sure our expert mga vaccine panel natin, dapat meron silang data niyan, di ba? Okay. What about yung pangatlo? Which is the third most popularly used?
Sir, we don't have the data yet, sir. We will find out immediately.
Okay. What about Sinopharm? Ilan na ba ang Sinovac? Ilan na ba ang nagamit na Sinovac na iturok na sa buong mundo?
Sir, based on the data that we have also from the newspaper, we have Turkey also in
Hindi, alam ko ginamit doon. Pero the point is, dapat may data na siguro tayo niyan doon sa 7 milyon na naturukan, ilan yung Pfizer, ilan yung AstraZeneca, ilan yung Moderna. Dahil importante yan para makita natin yung safety at yung efficacy, di ho ba, ng mga vaccine? Okay, now, etong
we will find the data, sir.
Yes, thank you very much. Etong vaccine na ba to? Meron na bang scientific na pag-aaral kung ilang buwan ka na may body armor, halimbawa, pagka naturukan ka ng vaccine? Ibig sabihin, lifetime ka na bang immune sa COVID pagka naturukan ka ng vaccine? O 6 na buwan, 3 buwan, meron na bang pag-aaral tungkol dito?
Sa ngayon po, wala po tayong malinaw na datos mula po sa mga
Wala pa rin.
eksperto kung gaano po katagal ang proteksyon
Correct.
na ibibigay ng bawat bakuna. Dahil unang-una, bago po itong bakuna na ito, so kinakailangan po talagang tutukan, pag-aralan, monitor po ang kanilang antibody titers. Siguro magkaroon po ng mga representative
Yes.
samples na pag-aaralan
Yes.
kung yung protection ay lampas 6 months or 1 year
Yes.
and beyond.
At yan, malalaman lang naman natin yan habang tumatagal, di ba? Kasi ngayon, 2 buwan pa lang naman na ginagamit yung bakuna Is that correct? Ibig sabihin,
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, Your Honor. Yes, sir.
so kailangan paghandaan din natin yan. Posible taon-taon kailangan tayo magbakuna, di ba? Okay.
Yes, Mr. Senator, posible po yun. Kasi ang mga pinakaunang naturukan po ngayon, from the earliest clinical trials, mga 6 months to 9 months.
Yes.
So we know that effective siya until 9 months, pero hindi pa po natin alam yung after 1 year.
Okay. Yung mga iba't ibang ang tao ba iba-iba yung naturalesa niyan? Halimbawa, pag Pilipino ka, posibleng mas malakas yung immune system mo laban sa COVID. Pagka halimbawa, Amerikana ka, pwedeng mas mahina yung immune system mo. May ganun pag-aaral ba? O pare-pareho lang lahat?
Your Honors, if I may answer the question.
Yes.
The current evidence show that for some of the vaccines, there is actually difference po in terms of response depending on the genetic background or as in this case, yung racial
Yes.
lineage. So, but the differences are not that significant. Pero meron pong pagkakaiba. Depende po sa bakuna.
Okay. Would that also possibly explain halimbawa sa Pilipinas, kalahating milyon lang ang tinamaan, 10,000 ang namatay, kumpara natin halimbawa sa Europa o sa Amerika? Pwede ba natin sabihin na posible mas matibay yung naturalesa ng Pilipino?
Tama po kayo kasi pag po when we talk about infections and protection against infections, there are 3 factors involved po. One of those factors is the host, yung tao po. Second is the characteristic of the virus or the one causing the disease. And the third one is the environment. So it's what we call the 3 factors involved in the infection process po.
Thank you very much for your response. Now, etong February, di ba may darating na tayong bakuna? Is that correct? May bakuna na tayong darating o dumating na?
Sir, that's our estimation that we will have the vaccination of February, sir.
Okay. So, tawag dito, ano to? Sinovac ang darating sa February?
Most likely, sir, Gov't and also Sinovac, sir.
Okay.
If they will be able to have the EUA.
Hindi ho ba para maganda ang rollout natin ng vaccine program? Di ba ang uunahin natin yung mga health workers natin?
Agree po, sir.
Okay. Now, hindi ho ba dapat ang ibigay natin sa health workers natin yung pinaka-safe at pinaka-effective dapat?
Agree, sir.
Okay. Meron ba tayong halimbawa sa FDA o di kaya sa expert panel natin na listahan na sa tingin nila sa kanilang pagsisiyasat ang pinakamabisa? Halimbawa lang Moderna o Pfizer o Sinovac, do we have a list halimbawa of the best possible vaccine?
Yes, sir, Mr. Senator. So, ang FDA po, pag naglabas ng EUA, linalabas din po natin yung kanyang description, including safety and efficacy. Pagkatapos po yung Health Technology Assessment Council po natin, i-assess din po at pipiliin nila kung kanino rin ang bagay sa kung aling grupo ng mga tao.
Correct. So, posible yan sasabihin nila, preferably, ang pinakamaganda na dapat natin bilhin ay, halimbawa, example lang it could be Sinovac o di kaya, halimbawa, Pfizer. Ang pangalawang best, Moderna. Ang pangatlo, AstraZeneca. Di ba? May ganun yun di ba? You will recommend So, shouldn't we give our health workers the best possible vaccine?
Agree, sir. Sir, may I interject, sir?
Yes.
Sir, actually, sir, during our negotiation, that's our requirement that they can have an early delivery. But in some cases, those vaccines that we prefer to be delivered early, they have some limitations on the supply. So, considering that they are the most sought
Yes.
brand.
Hindi, kasi, yes, nababahala ko, sinabi na spokesperson natin, kung ano yung nandyan, yan ang ituturok sa inyo. Nababahala ako doon.
Sir, actually, sir, we are still negotiating right now. Even we are negotiating with Moderna, and even we are negotiating diplomatically that those vaccine that we have considered very safe and have been used widely globally, we are trying to negotiate that will be they have an early rollout delivery
Yes.
for our health workers. That's
Yes.
also the reason why
So we have,
our Gavi
yes,
Gavi request that the Pfizer that normally the UA has been given to us already, that we recommended in our letter to Gavi that we be given that assurance for the participation, considering that the priority for our first rollout will be the healthcare workers. So
Okay.
we are recommending
Okay.
that they will give at least 3.7 million.
Okay. So, the bottom line is this. We are in agreement na yung pinaka-safe, pinaka-effective, the best possible vaccine ang ibibigay natin sa ating mga health workers. We are in agreement. You agree
Tama
with...
po kayo,
Tama,
Your Honor, Mr. Chairman. Kung with your permission, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
yun lang po kasing nabanggit ko kanina, yung pong apat na pangunahing layunin ng bakuna and their efficacy is insofar as the efficacy is involved. Number one po is to maiwasan o mabawasan ang mortality o yung pagkamatay.
Yes, yes.
Pangalawa po,
Out of that. Yes.
maiwasan po ang symptomatic cases.
Yes, we
Kasi-
understand that. Yes.
Opo. Yung
Okay.
pangatlo po, yung maiwasan, mabawasan
Yes. Ang
asymptomatic cases.
Yes, okay. Now, think about it this way, no? Halimbawa, hindi natin ibigay yung pinakamabisa, pinaka-safe na vaccine sa ating mga health workers at ayaw nilang tanggapin yung vaccine. Eh di, mas mahirap i-roll out yung programa. Di ba? Yung taong bayan mas maniniwala kasi mababang kumpiyansa ng taong bayan sa vaccine. So, ang taong bayan maniniwala pagka nakita nila that our nurses and our doctors nagpapaturok mismo. Now, yung mga nurses and doctors natin, hindi magpapaturok yan kung ibibigay natin kung ano na lang vaccine. Kailangan yung pinakamabisa, pinaka-effective at pinaka-safe. Di ho ba? Kaya ako binabanggit yan, we're rolling out the program. Okay? You don't want to start in the wrong footing. Di ba? Okay? So let's give them the best. In fact, we should give all the Filipinos the best possible vaccine. Isn't it? Okay? So, makikita ng FDA, malalaman ng HTAC, base sa data sa buong mundo. Sa ngayon, alam natin 7 milyon na ang naturukan. Di ba? So, napakaraming data na. Halimbawa, kung Pfizer ang ginamit, kung AstraZeneca, kung Moderna, at like I said, doon sa 7 milyon, maganda kung may numero tayo niya, pang ilan ba yung halimbawa Sinovac? Di ba? Ang Sinovac meron ng approval sa Amerika o sa Europa?
Mr. President, if I may, just one.
Let's get the answer first to the question of Senator Recto, then we'll allow Senator Villanueva to give the figures that Senator Recto is asking because
Yes.
he just got it from Bloomberg. May we have the answer to Senator Recto, the FDA, please?
Well, sa data po namin, Mr. President, wala pa po siyang EUA from a stringent regulatory agency.
Okay. Now, one last question no, on this issue. No? Ang China ba bumibili ng Pfizer, ng Moderna, at saka ng AstraZeneca?
Secretary Galvez.
Sir, to answer the question of the senator, how many have been administered already globally? We have a number here, sir, on the vaccine global tracker. We have
what was the last question, Senator Recto?
Yes, the last question, Mr. President, is ang China ba bumibili ng Pfizer?
I also encountered that in an internet post pero mukhang fake news But anyway, you answer, Secretary Galvez, can you answer that? Or perhaps Secretary Dizon, would you know if it's true that China is importing vaccines?
Just consulting with the DOH, but we don't have any information to that effect. So we don't know, Mr. Chairman.
Mr.
President,
President.
Senator Risa Oteveros.
Thank you, Mr. President. With the indulgence of Senator Joel. Similar to Senator Joel, there's also news, December 15th, 2020, also on Bloomberg, that China secures 100 million doses of BioNTech vaccine, co-developed by Pfizer. So this is in the December 20 news, Mr. President.
No, it's a different news from Senator Villanueva. It's the number of vaccines already. Yes, go ahead, Secretary Galvez.
Sir, most of the countries, based on the study of the Boston Consulting Group, most of the countries have adopted a portfolio strategy, considering that their current capacity right now, they cannot do it. Considering the population of China, more or less 1.2 billion and above, the three companies, the Casino, the Sinopharm and Sinovac, cannot produce all the capacity of those companies are ranging only 400 million. So with the need of really inoculating the whole 1.2 billion, they also apply the portfolio approach, wherein they will gather all their national volumes from other suppliers.
All right.
Yes, Mr.
With the permission of Senator Recto, go ahead, Senator Villanueva.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Just to give additional information being asked by our Senate President pro tempore, I have here with me data that says as of January 22, 2021, roughly 56.7 million COVID-19 doses have been administered in 52 countries. The source is Bloomberg, Your Honor, Mr. President, and perhaps the 7 million is as an estimate, and I think it's underestimated, Mr. President.
Yes.
Just to
Of
put
the
that on record,
56 million, yes.
56.7 million doses. So if you divide it by two,
Yes.
at least it's definitely more than 7 million, Mr. President.
Okay. Yes.
28 million.
Of the 50,
Approximately.
yes. So I would expect that our expert panel should have this data. No? Halimbawa, yung 56, ilan dyan yung Pfizer? Ha? Ilan dyan? Yan, ang mga actual clinical trial na rin yan. Okay? Ilan dyan yung Moderna? Ilan dyan yung AstraZeneca? Pang ilan yung Sinovac dyan? Would they have the data?
Would HTAC be able to answer those questions?
Sir, we will find out the answer and we will submit it on Monday. Sir.
All right. Yeah, that'll be okay. Senator Recto, are you going to wrap up, or Senator Marcos wants to interject?
Sure. I mean, yes, Senator Marcos can intervene. Yes.
Yes,
Go
Mr.
ahead.
President, I just wanted to add, I had information and I've read in several journals from the UK that the coverage is only 4 to 5 months following the vaccination. So I don't know how accurate that is. As our medical experts say, it's very, very preliminary. But 4 to 5 months doesn't seem like a very good deal. Secondly, Global Times of China, the People's Daily, has repeatedly criticized Pfizer and the other Western vaccines. So palagay ko fake news nga yung namimili sila. Kasi panay banat nila dun sa Pfizer at saka sa Western vaccines. Sabi nga nila yung Norwegian deaths, they are quoting the German deaths, and so on. This occurs in the China dailies regularly. So I believe it's unlikely that they're in fact procuring from the West. Thank you.
Okay. And finally, Mr. Senate President, so I
Go
think
ahead.
what most important is that we all agree here, and maybe the HTAC will be the one to recommend, no? That we give the best, the safest, the most effective vaccine to our frontliners to begin with. And then finally, Mr. President, yung mga, it would be difficult to open the economy if you cannot even open our schools to begin with. Okay? So, we know that education is essential. Education cannot be non-essential. Okay? Now, in the order of things, pang ilan yung teacher naman sa priority na babakunahan?
Mr.
Yes.
President,
Yes.
may I just quickly respond? Thank you very much, Senate President Pro Tempore. The teachers po, are part of the essential workers under the education sector po. So they are part of the prioritization.
I understand.
Thank you, sir.
But maraming essential workers. But isn't it that they should be on top of the list? I mean, you cannot open the economy if you cannot even open your schools to begin with. In fact, mas mauuna nga dapat yun kaysa sa restaurant eh. Di ba? Oh.
Mr. President,
Should there be a commitment, halimbawa, sige, let's do our health workers. Next is our teachers. So that you can have normalcy in the education sector, hopefully. Makabalik
Mr.
yung mga
President.
bata sa eskwela. Oh.
Mr. President, we've been informed that the technical working group is still working on the order of prioritization, but we will very seriously consider the very
Yes.
valid points raised by the
I'd
Senate
like to
President Pro
recommend that.
Tempore. Thank you, sir.
Yes. And in the last hearing that we had, I also recommended by age. It is simpler to do it that way. Because you can have all the vaccines, but if we don't have a plan on how to do it, how to inoculate, how to jab 70 million Filipinos twice, so that's 140 million. I recommended after the teachers, the health workers, teachers, and just to reiterate, or maybe senior citizens 16 above. Unahin natin, let's say, female and then male. Mas simple yun eh. And then 40 to 60, halimbawa, female and then male. And then 20 to 40, female and then male. It will be simpler to do it that way. Rather than say, okay, how many workers do we have? Sa dami niyan. And then, ito garbage collector muna. Tapos ito, Think about it, in terms of practicality. I think they've changed already the way they're doing it in many countries. Because masama yung rollout nila. Di ba? Okay. And then,
Mr. President, just very quickly on the point of Senator Recto, just a quick manifestation.
All right, good. Senator Dino wanted to manifest also. Go ahead, Senator Pangilinan.
Thank you. We would like to confirm that we have been in contact with some of our relatives in Guam, And precisely, the rollout includes age, stages, but age. Nauna na yung mga senior citizens, and then those below 60 were the next batch. So I'm confirming that with respect to at least the rollout in Guam. For the record, Mr. President.
Yes, and then they are now reprogramming, di ba? Sabi niyo, Senator
Yes.
Recto, reprogramming
Yes, that's
because
correct.
medyo may mali.
Correct.
Parang blessing in disguise na nahuli tayo. Dahil tututo tayo
Totoo
sa
rin
mali
yan.
nila.
Totoo rin yan.
Ano?
Oo.
Oo.
You know, it's fine with me na sa tingin natin February, March, April to a certain degree, because we will have more data. There will be more information available. No? And finally, Mr. President, so we have the commitment naman, no, of our vaccine czar and the DOH that under the law, let me again reiterate this, HTAC plays an important role. They will recommend how to spend public resources, public money, isn't it? After na-approve ng FDA, pag pera ng gobyerno ang pinag-uusapan, HTAC will recommend which vaccines to buy. And that's why the last hearing we had, do we have a representative from HTAC here?
Yes,
Yes.
they were invited and they confirmed.
Oh, thank you. So last question. Yes, Mr. Senate President. Can the HTAC, whoever the representative is, who is the representative of HTAC in our hearing today?
I think, Mr. Chair, we have Dr. Marita Reyes, the chair
Yes.
of the HTAC.
Dr.
Yes.
Tolentino Reyes, Marita Reyes, are you
Yes.
online?
Yes po.
Please,
Yes po.
Yes, good
please
afternoon.
reply to the question of Senator Recto.
Yes, good afternoon, Doctor. Thank you for being here.
Afternoon. Yeah.
Yes. Kayo, base sa batas, kayo ang inaasahan na scientists, medical experts na, in fact, wala naman sa batas na nagsasabing expert panel ng vaccine eh. Okay? It is the HTAC. Di ba? Okay? You play a major role in this activity, no? Okay. Can you promise us that there will be no political interference in choosing vaccines?
Promise na promise po.
Very good. So I rest with that. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr.
President Pro
Secretary.
Tem. I was tempted to infuse a little levity on one of your questions, but I'll do that later. Senator, before the minority leader, because the majority leader is skipping, just an intervention by Senator Tolentino. Go ahead.
Yes, Mr. President, since I was about to interject and I realized that I had a balance of 1 minute left before I stop, can I ask the good minority leader to give me just 30 seconds for 2 questions? Mr. President, during the last hearing, I categorically questioned Secretary Duque via a checklist enumeration. One of the questions that I posed, is a pregnant woman at risk and should be given inoculation? And the answer was no. Correct, Mr. Secretary Duque?
Yes, Your Honor.
I'm asking
Not yet.
I'm asking this because the following day, you appeared to have been overruled and reversed by your Undersecretary Berhere, allowing now pregnant women to be vaccinated. Lalong gumulo po ito. Yung buntis ba, pwede o hindi?
Mr. Senator, yung WHO guidelines po right now.
Allow me to continue. Mr. President, si Yusek Berhere, nag-press conference, ang sabi niya, yung buntis pwede nang bakunahan. Pero yung sa checklist na binanggit ko, yung galing sa Pfizer, galing sa Michigan, bawal yung buntis. So, ano nang tama dito? Medyo nakakalito na po ito. And I have a follow-up question pa kasunod nito. What is the answer?
Yung pong WHO guidelines ngayon on COVID-19 vaccination does not recommend the vaccination of pregnant women routinely.
Sinabi ni Yusek Berhere.
Well, however po, kung high risk yung buntis, halimbawa po, health worker yung buntis, then maaari po siyang examinin ng doktor at i-decide kung babakunahan siya. Pero as a rule po, it's not recommended.
So I think you should censure and not reprimand, but correct Yusek Berhere, Secretary Duque. Kasi nakakalito yon.
Yes,
sir. Yung mga buntis pumila sa bakunahan centers. My second question is this. Final na po ito. I realize this belatedly. Kanina pinag-usapan natin yung donation. There is a newly crafted DOH paradigm here, the tripartite agreement involving the LGUs. Ang sinasabi nyo, this was confirmed by the LG, kailangan LGU, national government, the foreign manufacturer, and Department of Health pag po magpo-procure. Tama po ba? Just nod your head, Secretary Duque. Thank you. My second question is this, and you can nod your head or just smile. Following our conversation a while ago, relative to donations, will the tripartite model still apply? Or will we now have a new formula? The donor coming from a foreign country and the donee from the Philippines? Wala nang pangatlong entity dito. Nod your head or smile. You can smile by removing your face mask. Ano po, Secretary Duque? Smiling, Mr. President. So it would appear that local government units from the smile of Secretary Duque can now accept donations. As exemplified by my line of questioning, they can accept donations coming from foreign entities, their partners, so long as this has an EUA and the number of the volume of vaccines would be in line with the forthcoming circular to be promulgated by the Department of Health, which is futuristic in that aspect, Your Honor. So tama po ba yun? You can nod ahead, your head again. Or would you want to explain and add something?
Yeah,
Wala nang tripartite donation eh. Kasi ganito po yung Secretary Duque. Pag bumili, may amount involved. Bibili eh. Maglalabas ng pera ang LGU. Pag donation, ang consideration po is the liberality, the generosity of the donor. So wala pong money involved dito. So pag donation, tama po ba? Wala nang tripartite?
Secretary Galvez, yeah. Sir, considering that is still an EUA, the responsibility on the other aspect should be still controlled. Kasi sir, pagka once na ang donation very loose, that will be tantamount to relegating the responsibility of the government of really ensuring safety and efficacy during delikado rin po yun sir.
Secretary,
Kasi mawawala po tayo, mawawala
if I
po
may
tayo.
interrupt you. Ang pinag-usapan kanina, yung meron ng existing EUA. Yun din ang
Kahit po sir, kasi ang EUA pa rin, dapat rin po, control pa yun ang
Yes.
considering that it has.
So again, we go back to the chicken and egg situation. Every donation would entail a different EUA again?
No sir, ibig sabihin lang sir, the administration, meaning the tripartite agreement or the administration of the donated vaccine should still be controlled by the national government, considering that the adverse effect and also the transport of the goods from the donor to the donor should be ensured that the efficacy will not be, for example, Pfizer. Meron po lager po yan sir, na tinatawag natin yung temperature lager. Once it is violated, it is nothing already. Meaning, if
That's
yes,
right. That's not the worry there. I understand the point of Senator Tiltino, but I understand also the answer of Secretary Galvez and the resource persons. Ang danger kasi, donation, papalagay mo nga, ang tatak EUA, merong EUA, Pfizer, pero hindi pala talaga Pfizer. Ginamit ngayon donation doon sa Cavite o sa Bukidnon. Pumalpak. Di ba? Kaya yun ang danger doon. Kaya kailangan pa rin, dumaan pa rin at i-check pa rin ng di ba? Pwedeng hindi tama yung pinadala eh. Pwedeng kung ano lang yung pinadala eh. Yun ang danger doon, siguro. Anyway,
Mr. President?
Perhaps you can give a study on the proposal of Senator Tolentino.
One
Mr.
last
President?
bago ko umalis. Donation is allowed. Just not just words. Allowed on donation. So long as it would not entail any diplomatic entanglement. Yung binanggit ko last hearing, for instance, sister city ng Tagaytay ang Tainan, nag-donate ng Taiwan ng vaccine. Medyo may one China policy na yon. So donation is allowed to LGUs. LGU internally, yung nabanggit ko yung Metro Manila, Parañaque can donate to Pateros kung kulang, di ba? Maliwanag yung kanina. Nasa transcript natin yan.
Agree, sir. Agree.
Opo.
Guidelines nyo na lang ang kailangan ngayon.
Yes, sir.
And we hope you can craft that guidelines based on what transpired during this hearing. Do not deviate. Kasi minsan, maglalabas kayo ng iba, hindi naman natin napag-usapan dito. Di ba? Yun yung nagkakaproblema tayo. So, do not deviate from what we have tackled here today and in the previous hearings. With all due respect to the gentleman who present. Wala na po akong tanong.
All right. Thank you. Thank
Mr.
you.
President, with
The next is
Mr. President, with the permission of the minority floor leader, related lang
Yes.
ho dun sa line of questioning ni Senator Tolentino.
go ahead.
Tanong lang ho, kasi hindi po ba, since EUA pa lang siya, for example, sa Amerika, yung mga private companies, for example, NGOs, hindi naman ho sila makaka-access ng vaccine, di ba? Dahil government lang yung pwedeng mag-procure nito. So, I mean, the scenario that we are talking about is not possible because it is an EUA and it's not for commercial use yung
Tama rin.
bakuna.
Tama rin. It's
Hindi ba,
possible, pero
hindi ba
fake.
po ba? Baka fake nga ho yung
Oh,
makuha.
possible, pero fake yung padadala.
Because I don't think yung
Oh.
Rotary ho from, let's say, Los Angeles can procure Pfizer or Moderna dahil it's only the federal government, I think, who can procure. Hindi ho ba ganun yung scenario?
Pwede. Anyway, we'll ask the IATF to
Yun lang
submit
po. Thank you, Mr.
a
President.
study on that. All right. The possibilities are all there. The minority leader is recognized.
Mr. President,
Senator Drilon, I understand your
point of parliamentary point of order, Mr. President. Just very quickly, may we request, with the permission of the thank you. With the permission of the minority leader, very quickly, Mr. President, may we request that when the resource persons are made to answer, that a nodding of the head is confusing. The stenographer may not know whether it is a yes or no, and we cannot see it also online, Mr. President.
All right.
Thank you.
We'll do that. Earlier, the smile of Secretary Duque means yes. All right. The minority leader is recognized.
Just okay. Is Senator Recto still around? Because I'm willing to give way to him if he has still have more questions. If he has none, wala na. Anyway, sige. Just a point, a manifestation. It is my understanding that the reason why the manufacturing companies require a tripartite agreement is that since this is just an EUA, they do not want to be held liable in case anything happens to the medicine being administered or the vaccine being administered. So yes, from that statement that we have heard before, you know, the good Secretary of Health can say yes, the donation or the local governments can be authorized to accept donations as they are authorized under the law today, except that if the manufacturer would not want to enter into that agreement without the national government, all those questions will just be academic and not realistic as it is going to happen. In any case, Mr. President, I no have further questions. I am willing to yield the floor to either Senator Binay or Senator Marcos, whoever would need my time. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
All right. Thank you, Senator Drilon, the minority leader, and thank you for that. We were expecting 9 hours today. Anyway, thank you for that. Senator Pangilinan is next. Senator Francis
Thank you.
Pangilinan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. A few questions for the IATF as well as the Department of Health. On the issue of the rollout, is Feb 20 still the targeted rollout date, Mr. Secretary Galvez?
Sir, our target rollout will be fourth week of February, and also on the middle of first quarter. So our rollout, as expected, will be coming from COVAX and also from Sinovac.
And the date you said in the previous hearing was Feb 20. So is that still a go, Feb 20?
Yeah, the definitive date of February 20 is our target. But in
Yes.
case that the EUA will not be issued on that date, we can move it forward to last week of February or March.
Of the 24.6 million, frontliners will be 1.76 million. Do we have a list already, or is that still by end of January? Yung sino ito 1.76 million frontliners, nasaan sila at paano ang magiging rollout sa kanila?
In the NCR, we have already the whole list of the frontliners, but we're still collecting the other regions.
Is there also a timetable? I recall in the previous hearing, one of the experts said that the rollout should be as quick as possible if we are to achieve herd immunity. Therefore, do we have specific targets as to how long are you planning, how many days needed to inoculate the 1.76 million frontliners?
Sir, this is depending on the quantity of the first tranches of the supply. But if we have more than enough, we will finish that in a 1 month time or less. Considering also that the timings of the second shot will be either 14 days or 21 days or even 28 days.
So you are saying, subject to supply, we will be able to cover all our health frontliners within a period of 1 month.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And maybe we can have this indicative timetable, for lack of a better term, for all the 24.6 million. Again, of course, you will have to qualify, as you said earlier, that this will depend on the supply. But we would like to see a specific set of deliverables in terms of target dates, similar to what you said earlier, Secretary Galvez, that we can, subject to supply, inoculate all health frontliners, or at least that is the target rollout within a month. Can we then break that down to the other priority, those in the priority list?
Sir, considering that we are still finalizing the supply agreement of the different suppliers and also vaccine manufacturers, we cannot give you the definitive date as of this moment, considering that it is included in the supply agreement, the definitive time of delivery. So
As soon as that,
we will recommend that we will submit it as soon as possible soon as the supply agreement has been signed.
yes, thank you. We'd like to see that when the supply agreements have been signed, so that we have clear-cut benchmarks and indicators as to the pace within which the vaccine is taking place, the targets that are set out, so that we know. And there is, of course, and I'm sure you too would agree, Secretary Galvez, that there is accountability.
Yes, sir. And for general planning only, considering that the indicative date is only given to different quarter, majority of the volumes will be coming in at third quarter and fourth quarter. So we are expecting the massive inoculation will be done on those dates, and we are assuming that also that we will finish all the inoculations by first quarter of 2022.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, if I may just add to the rejoinder of Secretary Galvez.
Please go ahead.
We will give you a indicative timelines, Your Honor, Mr. Chairman. But there are certain assumptions that we have adopted. For example, doon po sa non-Pfizer vaccine, for the first and second dose administration, at 24.6 million Filipinos, and with a vaccination sites numbering about 4,504, with 3 vaccination teams per hospital, and also with about vaccination teams per rural health unit. This will be the smaller implementing units. Dalawa po ang vaccination teams. And then the number of persons that can be vaccinated per team, assuming ang schedule po is 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., number of doses per person, 2, kakailanganin po natin ng 4 na po at 5 araw para po maisakatuparan ito pong pagbabakuna gamit po non-Pfizer. Ngayon, bakit po may distinction between non-Pfizer and Pfizer? Sa Pfizer po kasi, alam po natin medyo komplikado at masalimuot po yung storage management po nito. Kanya dito po kailangan mas mabilis. Tama po kayo kanina nung sinabi ninyo na kailangan mabilisan po ito dahil nga very sensitive po ito sa temperature fluctuation on top of the fact na kinakailangan po nito negative 70 to negative 80 degrees centigrade. Now, assuming the assumptions are the same for the non-Pfizer vaccines, ang kakailanganin pong araw ay 25 araw for 24.6 million, assuming yan po ang target population. Yun lang po. Salamat po.
Thank you. Just on the matter still of the vaccine rollout, do we have information from the World Health Organization as to the timetable as to when or how quick or what is the period within which 70%, 50 to 70% of the population should be vaccinated so that herd immunity is achieved? Because we ask this because previously, and I understand nagbago na ito, but previously the IATF was quoted as saying, based on the projections, that it might take us 5 years to do the vaccine rollout. But of course, that has been changed now, and we're looking at the earliest by the end of the year, 2021, or at the latest, 70% herd immunity vaccination will be first quarter of 2022. Meron bang, does the World Health Organization have a recommended timetable within which to achieve the vaccination and of 60 to 70% of the population?
Sir, we don't have the specific. Yes, I agree with Your Honor that we have targeted only initially 5 years because of the acute supply of the vaccine. But right now, considering that we were able to produce 148 vaccine for this year.